It's a brand new season, and what better way to kick it off than here today at the Daytona International Speedway. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome here to the beginning of Season 2 for the Clutch Drop Cup Series. I'm Seth Cole, alongside of Anthony McCrory. And Anthony, obviously, last season we crowned ourselves a champion, but coming into today's race, it's a clean slate for everybody as they begin their quest to see that at the end of the year, they're going to be the one to hoist that championship trophy.
Yeah, and it's a long season they got coming up too, but as you said, a clean slate that these drivers can work off of to make something big out of their season. The defending champion is in this race. That would be the 61 of Bronson Stafford, starting about mid-pack in this race, so he's looking to get a statement win today, hoping to get the win tonight, proving that he can be back into the championship hunt as we go through the season.
But every time that we have a new season, we see new blood come into the series, and look no further than tonight's front row. New formed team of Sim Racing Development. They have clinched the front row. It's going to be Brian Siberry starting on point alongside of his teammate in the 71, Alex Link. And as we know, at the super speedways especially, Anthony, it's usually that young blood, the drivers that we may not necessarily have a lot of information about, that end up being those that are up there at the front and sniping away a win from drivers that we're very familiar with, the grizzled veterans.
Yeah, you got to be aware of those rookies because they can, as you said, just get in there and see that what they can do with their skill set that these drivers may not be familiar with. The drivers that are familiar with each other, they will know kind of what they're going to be doing based on the races that they had last season, but the young guns, the ones that you need to watch out for, they have no fear either. They're going to go in there and try and get this win, prove themselves amongst the ranks of the other drivers that have been veterans of the series. So, a lot of things can happen at Daytona, and what better place to showcase your talent than at a place known as the World Center of Racing. But I am excited to see what these young drivers can do to take it to the more experienced ones.
Rolling off from the 8th position is where we find Mike Tellier. Now, he won this race back in the first season, then was driving the legendary number 3, now in a new number of 97 for Luminary Racing number 2, the development team, if you will. And I gotta wonder for him, especially with what we saw happen with him last season. He was dominant at the beginning of the year, picked up 3 early victories, but then we got to the midway portion of the season and then towards the playoffs, the performances just did not seem to add up to what he had at the beginning of that year. Obviously, it's very difficult to be able to win back-to-back races at Daytona, but do we consider him one of the favorites to maybe be the first one to the checkered flag at the end of the night?
Well, he's done it once before, and if anybody in this field knows how to do it, it would be him. So let's see if he can have some similar luck come his way through this race. And, being that he did win the last one, he's got a bit of an ace up his sleeve. He knows what the car's going to feel like around all these other drivers, and he has tasted victory lane in this one.
Let's turn them loose as Season 2 of the Clutch Drop Cup Series is officially underway at Daytona. Looks like the inside line going to be formed up a little bit better, at least with the top 2. And so therefore, Siberry is going to edge ahead for the time being. Joe Weber is going to follow in his tire tracks. David Durand as well in the 24. But we know that as this race goes on, we're going to see that second line and maybe even third line start to form and actually build momentum.
Yeah, absolutely. This track's got a lot of lines for these drivers to work with. Right now, the bottom of the racetrack seems to be the preferred line for a lot of drivers. You see a lot of them snaking down to the inside. That whole inside row, about 6 cars back to 2 wide racing, back with Tom Bourne and Alex Link. So, you have the inside line as dominant as it is. It wouldn't be surprised if a lot of drivers want to hug it as you see them right down on that double yellow line as they complete lap 1. We're a long way to go, Seth. 130 laps in this race that these drivers have to go through, and right now, so far, everyone's doing really good on this first opening 2 laps.
And this may be the portion of the race especially where drivers might do a little bit of experimentation. You saw the 31 of Gerald Campbell jump up to the top side there, seeing if anybody else inside the top 10 would be willing to work and form a second lane. Obviously, the answer is no. The 31, no friends on that top side, starting to drop back, now about to fall outside of the top 10.
And that's a bad feeling for him, for Campbell. If he wants to get back on the inside line, he's going to have to fight his way there. But so far, going the wrong direction. Everyone jumping to the inside line. All those drivers that we were mentioning that were in side-by-side battles, they're now on the inside line. Now the 31's got some friends on the outside to try and get going the right direction. That would be the 51 of Coleman. That's going to be right behind him. And then right behind him, I believe that's the 26 of Riggs, who slides to the inside of the racetrack.
And take a look at this. Toyota's jumping up to the top. Those are all teammates. Tom Bourne, I believe, is the car leading the charge in the 54. He's got Austin Greatorex, Mike Tellier, Bronson Stafford all up there with him. Now they're going to fan 3 wide as Siberry saw that run coming, tried to block it, and they're going to split 3 wide, 2 rows deep, almost 4 wide through the tri-oval.
Yeah, there's a car in the middle of the track back there that he does not want to be in that part, and that is the 33. Going back to the back of the field. Slowly the 33 on the outside line, rather, I should say. But there's a lot of drivers getting split in the middle right now. And you've got the 2 FRN cars going right up on the top side. It's going to be Tristan Mayer, I believe, leading that charge.
And that is going to be actually Tom Bourne up there on that top side with Mike Tellier in tow. Austin Greatorex there also. Inside line, it was David Durand, and I believe that was Tristan Mayer in the 17, trying to get something going, but Tom Bourne with the push. He's going to go to the point. Remember, Tom Bourne was one of the drivers in the hunt for the championship last season at Charlotte. Got involved in an incident on lap 1, was not able to battle for the remainder of that race. Had a Pocono win last season, but the luck at the super speedways last year just did not seem to go the way of the 54. Looked strong early on here, but now here comes his teammate on the outside. The 2 FRN cars going to go side by side as here comes the defending Daytona winner, Mike Tellier, in the 97.
And he's got a bit of a run also on that outside line. That outside line is coming in now as you got the 13 of Greatorex pushing him alongside the outside line. Now to the lead goes Mike Tellier. So Tellier's got a strong car on the outside, it seems. He's also bringing the 21 of Warrior with him. So you got that car. You've got a lot of them behind. You got the 34 of Kenny also coming alongside with him. So the outside line is coming into play. Tellier and Greatorex come down onto the inside line, try to defend. But it looks like that the outside line might have hit a stall for a moment, but coming back in as the 21 is now leading the way.
And it looks like definitely Luminary was able to get their cars lined up sooner than any of the other teammates. You also saw a second car on that outside line, the 34 of Robert Kenny, last year's Bristol winner, also in the vicinity. So about 6, 7 of the Luminary drivers all up here, able to work together. And obviously when you've got the numbers game, you're able to control the draft, control what lines are running. And then Mike Tellier there in the 97, he's actually going to step out of line on his 2 teammates, pick up Joe Weber in that 21, try and see if we can get something for him, because obviously you want to work with your teammates, but everybody as well wants to get out there, get that bonus point for a lap led. And then of course we get down to the closing stages with 10 laps to go. There are no friends as problems for our pole sitter. The 33 of Siberry is coming back onto the track after he was just on pit road. So I would definitely assume only 7 laps in, that would be an unscheduled pit stop for the driver that started on the inside of the front row earlier on.
He had lost the draft quite a bit. After he got shuffled up to the high line, he did slow down quite a bit. I don't know if he got it a little piece of the wall, but he did come down pit road very early. Had lost the draft, like I said, but definitely an unscheduled stop. Not really sure if there's a problem with the 31. He seems to be up to, the 33. He seems to be up to speed. He's caught the tail end of the lead pack at the moment, so down in 31st, 1 lap down, so not exactly the best position you want to be in at this moment in time, but still, if a yellow does come out, he would be the first to get a wave around, or the lucky dog, so not a detrimental position for him to be in at the moment. Up at the front, you got Bourne leading the way. Now, a car off to the inside, that's the 26, I think, no, the 24 of David Durand.
So David Durand, looks like that actually is strategy. A lot of drivers do that. They'll utilize the back straightaway, the straighter version of the 2 straightaways, to be able to drop low, let drivers on by. Sometimes they do that because they don't feel comfortable with where they're at, thinking maybe that the storm could be brewing for the dreaded big one, and nearly contacted the tri-oval there with Tyler Riggs, Bronson Stafford. I think that was 21 in the middle, of course, in the tri-oval where the car is going to feel at its lightest. And this league, it is open setup, and I ended up being told the reason for the unscheduled stop for the 33, he left his qualifying setup on. Obviously, you can't run the same kind of settings there as, oh, wow, someone's really slow. Was that Tyler Riggs on the brakes there on the back straightaway?
Riggs has locked up on the back stretch and has come to a complete stop on the back straightaway off the inside of the road. I think that he got some contact, but he's stuck there on the inside. He's got the car backfired, going the right direction. No yellow flag, but Riggs locking up the tires, going down the back straightaway after some contact from, I struggle to see who that was. It might have been the 51 of Coleman. That was about where he was running at when he made that contact.
So, tough break there for Tyler Riggs. He still remains on the lead lap. We'll at least get the thing fired up and hope and pray that a caution comes out before he gets put a lap down, as we were 3 wide, 2 rows deep, still 3 wide up here at the front, but for one point it was for the race lead, and it's going to be Robert Kenny with the help of Tom Bourne, who's going to go to the front. And going back to the point I was making on that 33, when you are running out there in race trim with your qualifying setup, you are at max tape and no gas, just enough gas to be able to make it for a qualifying run. So that 33 absolutely had to come to pit road, or else he was more than likely either going to run out of fuel or blow up.
Yeah, and then you don't want to have that happen, especially early on in a race. If you can get down and get that fixed without any sort of real consequence, then absolutely go for it. You can't run out there forever on that kind of a setup. So good move on the part of the 33 team for bringing them onto pit road. Now, I did go back and take a look and see what happened with the 24 of the 26 of Riggs, and he actually got a little bit of contact with the 13 of Greatorex. So he had a whale of a run and then ended up getting right up to the back end of the 13, and that shot him down to the inside, and then it looked like his wheel locked up dead left and he had to slam the brakes. So I don't know if that was due to the contact or if something on his side, technical wise, happened that shot him down the inside, but tough break for the 2016.
Yeah, first with the camera shot we had showing these drivers kind of panning down towards us on the back straightaway, I thought maybe there was about 3-4 drivers that were moving down to the inside, much like Durant had done the lap before to drop to the back, but definitely makes sense that with that contact going on, drivers would be fanning out left and right just in case a wreck took place, to be able to hope and pray they'd be in the right line to avoid the incident. As Mike Tellier continues to show the way, now there's a driver that you may not be able to really pick out from last season, even though he is running the same sponsorship, I do believe, but a new number. That's a driver that was in the Final Four last season.
It looks like that was the 97 of Tellier that just got shot to the inside after contact with Bronson Stafford. Sorry to cut you off, but Bronson Stafford came right down in front of the 97 and he shot dead left. He did save the car. He's back going the right direction.
Drop back now to the 18th position is Mike Tellier, and I saw that smoke when you had that reaction. Wasn't sure who it was that was out of shape. That's one of the tougher places to save a race car, too. It's a wonder the 97 didn't spin completely around.
Yeah, he did a great job saving that car, did Tellier, and he's now he's back still with the draft, so he's got a chance to get back into the lead group of cars, but Stafford...
Oh, we got a car in the grass there on the front straightaway. Is that Tyler Riggs in the 26 again?
That would be Riggs in the infield. You're right. He is. I think he's got the same problem he had earlier. His wheels turned dead left again.
Looked like he might have been trying to actually get to pit road just based on the marks there, the ruts in the infield grass. And so as he stopped there off the racing surface, no caution comes out yet. Going back to the driver I was just going to highlight, he's got a new number this season. Last season we saw him in the number 20, and that was Dylan Stipe. And let's not forget, Dylan Stipe made his way into the Final Four to compete for the championship because he won the last restrictor plate race of last season at Talladega. So another driver that could be a little bit of an under-the-radar driver you'll have to watch out for. If he's up there near the front, near the end of this race.
Indeed so. Stipe had quite a few good runs last season, finds himself in a really good run right now early on in the Daytona race. So, a lot of these drivers coming into this race, they have a lot that went well for them last season. A few of them have some to prove, but Stipe, one of those drivers with a lot that is riding on him, a new number for that driver. So looking really good right now is the 4 machine.
And I know that obviously a thing that we documented quite a bit last year, especially towards the end of the season, was contact that would take place between the luminary drivers. It happened in the season finale at Charlotte. It even happened at that Talladega race. It happened in between those 2 races, and I believe it was Chicagoland. And as you just mentioned, we had some more contact, this time between the teammates of Bronson Stafford and Mike Tellier. So they're hoping that curse doesn't transfer over here into season 2.
Yeah, you really don't want to have some bad omens coming in to season 2, and it's not getting off to a really good start for those teammates right now. But I mean, it's early on in the season. A lot of the kinks that were in season 1 are going to carry over to the first race of season 2, and we've already seen a number of those so far. But it's something that these teams have to iron out, and it's a long season. We got a long way to go. It runs pretty much the entire length of the real NASCAR season. So a lot of opportunity for these teams to really figure out a way that they can be on the same racetrack and not have some race-ending contact that we've seen sometimes last season. But early start to this one, we've already seen some contact between the 61 and the 97. So a little bit can go a long way, and a lot can happen in a short matter of time at this racetrack. And if that had resulted in a crash, it could have taken out a lot of the field behind them. If it was at the front of the field, you have 31 other drivers right behind you that could have been involved in that one. We would have had the big one really early. I don't know if they would want to have had that happen so quickly, but we got cars diving down for pit road at the moment.
And that would be Alex Link and Jeremy Bushi, as well as Tim Hendry. These are all teammates that are coming down pit road here on lap 18. So obviously this would be team communicated pit stops for these drivers, regularly scheduled. Could be settling in for a round of green flag pit stops here if this is the indication.
Yeah, and if they came down pit road this early, lap 18, these drivers may not be able to stretch it as far as I thought they could have. I think the pit window is somewhere between maybe 18 to I think 22, maybe 23. So a lot of drivers might be making that hard left, and coming out of 4. Yep, we got more coming. Oh, one of them almost got out of shape, though. That was a good save. I believe that was the blue machine, the 85 in front, but that was Grant Fox. But there is a car that spun around. That is the A15. That was the 15 of Travis Daly that spun around.
So he's going to have to try and recover from that, and several drivers overshooting their pit stalls there. Good gracious me, the 4 overshot, the 85 overshot. I think that might have been the 18 of Jacob Grant behind him that almost went a full pit stop ahead of where his stall was. So all of a sudden, these drivers, after that little bit of an off season, they're having to get used to hitting their pit signs again.
Yeah, and these cars, they like to lock up at Daytona, so if you overshoot, it could be detrimental. Here come the leaders. Stafford now coming down, the 34 coming with him, and a few drivers stayed out. The 97 of Tellier, hard on the brakes, almost runs into the back of Robert Kenny, but good on the brakes, and 3 wide going down pit road.
Yeah, that's not going to work out so well, depending on where their pit stalls are, as those 2 drivers you were mentioning that stay out, going to be Gerald Campbell and Joe Weber. They are going to be lined up nose to tail, a Chevrolet and a Ford. A couple of other drivers did stay out as well, but they were drivers that were back in a second group that were running about 3 seconds behind the first group. Justin Belmonte, Nick King, Nathan Hall, and others. We'll see if the 31 and the 21, who are not teammates, if they're going to come down pit road this time. Nope, they're going to stay out an extra lap. So these are the guys that are going to try and push it as possibly as far as they can.
Yeah, and seeing just how far they can go on a single run of fuel, that could be the difference later on in the race. If this race goes green for any length of time, then you want to be able to know exactly what your car can and can't do. Is that second group was still electing to stay out, the leader of Belmonte in that group. So they obviously have some kind of alternate strategies than these other drivers do. It might pay out dividends for this second group. Really, if they can get on a alternate strategy, all of these guys can, then that might translate to some track position later on in the race, especially if it comes down to a couple laps worth of fuel. Even if a yellow does come out, a couple laps does matter and can go a long way in a race like this, certainly.
Well, one thing we know for certain is that these drivers cannot make it the entire 35-lap first stage on what they've got in the tank. They're going to have to come to pit road somewhere between now and the stage caution. We're awaiting 11 drivers to make their pit stop. Actually, we can check off quite a number as we've got about 7-8 drivers coming to pit road from 4th position on back.
Yes, we do. Gary Peck going to lead them down onto pit road. Got Justin Belmonte also coming down pit road. Derek Schilling, Deshaun Gorham, They're all on pit road, though. I think that's the 28 of Nathan Hall. Yeah, he didn't overshoot, but I think the 27. Oh, that's someone driving by. Sorry, that's the 51 that I've locked on to. Someone overshot their pit stall. I think it was the 27 that overshot his pit stall, but there's quite a few drivers that, yeah, it was the 27 to Carroll that overshot. So they're going to fall down like a rock as most of the leaders going by now.
Quite a number of them overshot. Now Gerald Campbell's going to come to pit road. He overshoots his pit stall. My goodness, that might be if we end up coming down to the end of this race, ending with a green flag pit stop, that could be the main storyline of execution on pit road, getting into your stall, as Joe Weaver continues to stay out in the 21 machine. He's been out for 23 laps, and so that's something else we're going to have to take notice of, depending on when a late caution might fly. If it flies within that window, we would know that drivers, at least conservatively, would be able to make it to the checkered flag on fuel.
Indeed so. He's been out there the longest. I think he's going to come down pit road at this stage, so hopefully he can get out in a good position. He was running by himself for quite a bit of that last stint, around the last couple of laps or so. So there's going to be a big question mark of where he's actually going to come back out onto the racetrack. He only had about he's like a 23-second lead when he hit the stripe. So he's gonna get past for sure. But how far back is the 21 going to fall is the question. Is he's actually hit his stall pretty well. He's been one of the only drivers that have really hit his mark perfectly. As here comes the leaders, and Stafford is going to put him back down. He's going to fall at least to 16th. It looks like it's going to be 16th for that driver, but that second group of cars led by Tim Hendry is coming up pretty quick too.
No surprise that after a round of green flag pit stops, the field gets rather split up, and right now we're two-car tandem, and at the front of the field, teammates Bronson Stafford and Robert Kenny, and I just watched that last time by. There's about a group of roughly 5-6 cars behind them. This two-car tandem ran 0.3 of a second. No, I'm reading that wrong. The second group actually ran about 0.7 of a second faster than the second group. I thought the second group was actually faster. I misread, so these two are going to get reeled in. I thought maybe it was possible to line up close enough that you could actually pull away with two machines, and now you're seeing Bronson's going to let the 34 by. I think the reason for that is to allow the 34 to cool off his engine.
Yeah, he was pushing him quite a bit down the front straightaway, right locked up at the back end of the 61. I'm actually kind of surprised they were able to lock up. The Toyota nose is not exactly the flattest surface to really lock up on, although these cars do have a pretty flat back end of the car, so they could really push if you're easy going down the front straight and the back stretch. The turns you probably wouldn't want to do it in, but as you see, that second group with just the manpower is going to catch this two-car tandem in front. So Stafford now being caught by the 13 of Greatorex, and you've got Tellier, Bourne, and Coleman. And so how about a good bounce back for Tellier? He almost spun around due to the 61 cutting him off earlier, and now he's back into the fourth place position. So a great comeback, even in this short few laps for the 97, as we thought for sure, or at least I thought for sure, he was heading straight for the inside wall a few laps ago, but back up into the top 5 and actually being very competitive. So that car still with very minimal, if no damage on it.
I also thought he might be a car we'd see come back down pit road having to serve a speeding penalty, because as you documented just how hot he came into pit road, having to maneuver his way around other drivers, but apparently was able to get it down to pit road speed, did not get black flagged or penalized, and so you're right, a very good recovery for that 97. And of course as well, Mike Tellier, while he did not win the championship last season, he didn't advance to the Final Four despite being one of the early favorites in the season, winning, I believe it was 3 of the first 6 races. He did, however, run consistent enough that if we had had no playoffs last year, if we ran the old NASCAR format, he would have ended up winning the championship that way, because he ended up actually winning the overall regular season championship, if you will, with most points accumulated. But just due to the fact that he didn't advance to the Final Four after a great start to his year, you know that he's out for redemption, and what better way to do it than have back-to-back wins to start out the 2 seasons here at Daytona.
Yeah, and he has got some friends around him that can make that happen. He's got the second of the FRN cars right behind him and Bourne, but he's also got a few teammates around him as well. So Tellier is one of those drivers that he does show that he can have consistent finishes. All throughout last season, he was consistent, and then towards the end of the season, kind of started to fall off just a little bit. But then, as you said, did fail to make the post race. But that's just kind of the nature of the way that the playoff system works. Is that you can be consistent all season long up until the playoffs, and then you have to keep bringing your A game even into the playoffs. You can't just keep riding on. You can't just keep riding on the fact that you have to be consistent over the course of the whole season. You have to be consistent over the whole season, and then once you get the playoffs, you have to bring that same level of consistency. But still, Tellier out for redemption from last season, missing the championship, but one of the favorites to win this championship, the guy who won the championship two cars ahead of him, really, is the 61, still leading the way. Now that 61, Seth, Bronson Stafford was also one of the more consistent drivers last season, as he won a great deal of races, including one dogfight at Michigan that he won. So, there's a lot riding on Bronson Stafford also. He needs to go double down. He wants to go double down at least. He wants to win this season as well as last season. And there's a lot of weight on his shoulders that he has to bring with him. Like, he's going to have a target on his back the entire season. Everyone's going to be gunning for that 61, and right now, to the inside goes Greatorex, and that is going to be a successful pass as the 61 gets shuffled back to what is going to be a net fourth place at the moment.
Looks like Bronson may have actually moved up there on purpose to allow Greatorex a chance to be out in front here in that 13 machine. Of course, Austin Greatorex, a lot of times we're used to seeing him up at the front at the road courses, but he can certainly get it done at the super speedways as well. And I want to go back to a point you were just making about Bronson Stafford being the defending champ and having a target on his back. I mean, obviously the two drivers that we've basically been highlighting coming into this one, Stafford, the defending champ, and Mike Tellier, the defending Daytona winner from last season. Which one do you think more has a target on their back? And with that being said, I mean, obviously they've got fast race cars. They're from the top 5, but when push comes to shove, are these the two guys that are going to find themselves left out to dry in the closing stages of this race if somebody behind them has a shot of winning?
Certainly so. Both of these drivers equally have targets on their backs. Obviously, Tellier being the one who won last season at this race, and then you have Stafford, who's the defending champion. So a lot of these drivers are looking to prove that they belong up in the top name of drivers when in conversation with the best in this series. So if you can get a win over not one but both of them, and do it in a fashion that shows that you know how to dominate and know how to put your car where it needs to be, then that sends a statement throughout the rest of the season. These drivers are going to be someone to look at. Think about these drivers that are running up in the top 5, even the top 10 at the moment. You've got Austin Greatorex leading the race. You've got Tom Bourne, Robert Kenny, Matt Dyer, who's made his way up into the top 6. And you have Jared Campbell, Evan Coleman, Jeremy Bucci. You've got a lot of drivers that are trying to gun for this win and send a statement out that we can be consistent at 26.
Tyler Riggs hard into the wall up there in turn 3.
And that is an engine expired for the 26. I don't know how many fast repairs these guys have going into this race. Caution still not out. He's caught up on the top side of the racetrack, grinding against the wall. He's got to get that car to the inside. I don't know if that car's got enough pull to do it. He just barely gets onto pit road, so the nightmare for the 2016 continues as he's pulled onto pit road.
33 laps in, and everything that could go wrong has gone wrong for the driver, Tyler Riggs, as he was already 3 laps down prior to that incident there. It looked like his car just got loose and bounced off of, I think it was Matt Dyer's number 8, so we'll have to document how that's going to affect Matt Dyer for the final 2.5 laps, so soon to be 2 laps here in this first stage. Also keep an eye on the left side of your screen with the ticker. Right now, first car 1 lap down is the 43 of Nick King. If he can remain there and nobody else goes a lap down, he would get the free pass when the caution comes out, which will be in about a lap.
Yeah, and everyone's trying to get that first stage win. You've got about 5 cars now that's left to get that stage win. So the heat's gotten on to these 5 drivers, and right now, Greatorex trying to hold the inside line. He's got a lot of cars on the outside, though, that are gunning for that. Tellier still with a lead, just barely going through turn 3 and 4. Can the 2 cars on the inside, though, be faster than the 3 on the outside? Survey says at the moment, looks like the inside line might be your friend regardless of how many you've got. If you're in a 5-car fight and you've got one guy pushing you on the bottom as he gets the lead at the line, does Greater X, looks like maybe that's the best place to be as the stage comes to an end.
Actually, no, that is not the stage caution. We've had an incident just before that over in turn 3. The 85 of Garrett Fox heavily involved as the suspension on that car has it skewed way to the left. Couple of other drivers I saw leaving the scene had damage as well. Couldn't quite pick out who they were, but obviously that 85 all torn up.
That is a very poorly looking race car at the moment. No front end, crabbing down the front straightaway. That car has got some severe suspension damage. You're basically drifting around these turns. I'm looking to see who else might have been involved in that one. And I think maybe I'm looking to see if anyone's got damage. And Nathan Hall's got a little bit of rear end damage in the 28, so he might have been one of those drivers that were involved in that one.
18 of Jacob Grant got a piece of it, as well as the 43 of Nick King, who was going to get the free pass. The 17 of Tristan Mayer also got a bit of the incident, and there was contact, though he did not necessarily spin up the track for the 31 of Gerald Campbell also. So about 5, maybe 6 drivers getting damage in this one, and obviously, with the timing of this yellow, this will count as the stage caution as well as the leaders come down pit road.
Yeah, everyone's coming down trying to get some service on their machines, and what better time to do it is the stage had just come to an end, so we get top off and get some fuel. Oh, the 13 of Greater X has missed his stall. A lot of drivers missing their stalls. In fact, the 17 almost overshoots. Here comes the 71 of Link. Does he overshoot? No, he gets onto pit road nice. So a lot of drivers trying to find their marks here at the Daytona Speedway. And the 73, look at the whale of a stop that they had. Jeremy Bushy is going to come out in front of a lot of these front runners.
We talked about that newly formed team of Sim Racing Development locking up the front row with 2 of their cars, and Jeremy Bushy, another driver out of that team, going to be the driver that looks like he will be leading us to the green flag. So great stop for him, as drivers still getting some damage repaired back there. Tristan Mayer still on pit road. Matt Dyer still on pit road after the contact he had with Tyler Riggs. Looks like Jacob Grant, Garrett Fox, also Tim Hendry back there getting some extra repairs done to their machines. The lucky dog I thought was going to be the 43 of Nick King. He did get involved in the incident, though, technically, so we'll have to wait and see if indeed he will be the free pass car or if it will actually go to another driver. But we'll follow up on that. You see the 33 of Brian Sibery. Now, Sibery, he's actually, I believe, going to get the wave around to get back on the lead lap unless he decides to come pit road this time, because he, remember, had that unscheduled pit stop to change out from his qualifying to his race setup. And with staying out here, since he was on pit road, I think it was about 10 laps ago, he'd be able to still run quite a distance before having to go to pit road again. So he would actually be back on the lead lap. So that stage caution came up very timely for him.
He's only got, I think, 7 laps on that current stint that he's on. So he's going to be in a little bad way if they have to go to green flag stops in the next stage, as he's going to be quite a bit off the pace when all these other drivers that would be in the draft comes down. So he might have to make that stop by himself. But for the time being, it does work out very nicely for the 33 of Sibery. And getting back on the lead lap is the most important thing at the moment. If you can get on the lead lap and then catch a lucky caution, then all of a sudden you're back within the fight. So definitely a good choice for that team to stay out as everyone's lining up. I think that we're about ready to go back to green as they're lining up double file some parts of the racetrack back there, but have to wait and see. Tyler Riggs has officially retired from the race as a result of that accident. So a combination of his wheel or something, his wheel seemed like it kept locking up to the left side, and then it looks like he got that resolved, and then that punt to the outside wall has really done a number for that 26. So has retired from the race, unfortunately. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, I don't know why, but the 18 of Jacob Grant's also seemed to be retired.
Well, he was involved in that incident as well. And we were going to see if we could get an interview here with our stage winner, but it doesn't look like we're going to be able to because they're getting ready to go back to green, Austin Greatorex. So maybe we'll see if we can get a word with him here at some point in time between now and the end of the second stage. But for the moment, it's going to be Jeremy Bushi leading them back to green, Mike Tellier in second, Tom Bourne, Bronson Stafford, and our stage one winner, Austin Greatorex, getting us back underway. We ended up having only one caution back in that first stage, and that was right there near the end. We'll have to see if we have ourselves a rather clean stage two.
Yeah, it looks like that everyone's kind of gotten a good start. That outside line did work wonders for Mike Tellier. He's pulled out to the lead in front of the 73 of Bushi, so he's gotten back to the front of the field. Tom Bourne on the outside line is going to go with him. We got a couple of cars on the apron. I think that might be by design as they're kind of going back to the middle of the pack as everyone fanning out behind, trying to get slotted in line for this next stage and another stage of 35 laps for these drivers. So another green flag stop going to happen sometime. What we saw in the first stage, Seth, who do you think the friends are going to be in this stage? Certainly, I think we know who the friends are going to be in the top of the field, but some of those drivers back there, maybe just outside the top 5, even down as far as the top 15, there are some alliances forming back there, I've noticed.
There are indeed some alliances forming, and I think two that I saw forming at least during that first stage, and now they may have actually dissipated because 50% of both of those duos got involved in incidents and are now running towards the back. But I saw the 4 and the 85, that being Dylan Stipe and Garrett Fox, who of course was involved in that last incident. They were working together, those Chevrolet Camaros. And I also saw a duo of Fords working together, the 8 of Matt Dyer, who now finds himself back in 14th after a little bit of an extended stay on pit road. I saw him working with the 51 of Evan Coleman. So if he can get back up there into the vicinity of the 51, watch for those two drivers to possibly work together also.
Yeah, Evan Coleman, a lot of ways away from him at the moment, running in 7th place, while Matt Dyer is back in 13th and just clinging on to this lead pack. The lead pack has kind of gotten away from this second pack that's kind of forming up, and I call it a pack. It's really just like a string of cars that's following the lead group of cars. You've got the leader of this lead pack, and I think that would be the 22 of Peck. No, it would be the 4 of Matt Dyer, I think, is actually falling right behind the 22 of Gary Peck. So Peck trying to get back up to this lead group, and they have done so. So a much larger field than we saw at the end of the last stage. And I wonder if the reason why that those drivers got separated to begin with was because of a couple of those close calls that we had earlier on the race, and that's what really separated the field. But we're seeing a little bit more of that as you've got side-by-side racing all the way back to the 51. And speaking of Coleman, Matt Dyer's found that 51 now. I'm sorry, Matt Dyer, that's Dylan Stipe right behind. Yeah, that's Dylan Stipe right behind him. I'm sorry. Matt Dyer's actually rocketed up to the 8th place position, but we've seen a lot of the drivers back there have kind of fallen back and side by side all the way up about the first couple of rows, and then it's pretty much single file all the way back. I think that's more or less by design rather than just them being a slower car. Is I know there's quite a few new drivers in this field, but I think that survival is more important as we still got more than halfway to go in this race, and you don't want to use up your stuff this early on, as I don't think there are any fast repairs for these drivers to use, as Riggs actually went out of the race as a result of that, and if he had one, then he would have been back on the racetrack.
Jacob Grant also out of the race right now, scored in 29th. Garrett Fox in between Riggs and Grant right now in 30th, still on pit road, getting damage repaired to his number 85, and I think that's going to be a long sit on pit lane. You want to talk about an alliance for him? How about those Camaros up on the top side? Now, we've seen Gerald Campbell up at the front at the beginning of this first stage, but how about the 3? Braxton DeWeese has now made his way up there into the top 5, pushing the 31, trying to get that outside line going, and they're starting to gain some members up there as well. The 21 of Joe Weaver is up there. Also moving up is, I believe that is the Lap Machine, the 27 of Bob Carroll, and behind them, the 4 of Dylan Stipe.
Yeah, the outside line is definitely a lot different than what we're used to seeing earlier on the races. You got Campbell now going to the lead of the race. That outside line got a major run down the back straightaway. Look at that. Almost got cleared, did the 3 of DeWeiss, but he's going to have to fall back just in line with the 61 of Stafford. So that outside line continuing to go as Campbell is actually dropped to the inside as they cross the stripe. So still racing very, very hard, these drivers are. And it looks like there was a little bit of a push that Bronson gave Campbell going down the front straightaway into turn 2. So these drivers getting quite racy even earlier on in the second stage. I wonder if this is a little bit of them trying to get a little antsy, trying to get to the front and maybe kind of assert dominance at the front of the field. I don't think that they really want to race clean, as I don't know how else to put it. These drivers, they want to go and they want to race hard, and there's a big train behind them that has other ideas, but this lead group of cars, they certainly are racing each other pretty hard earlier on in the race.
That's like two different areas of the field. Up here inside the top 10, you've got highway traffic maybe around 5 o'clock in the afternoon. From 11th place on back, it kind of looks like highway traffic between 10 and 11 o'clock in the morning. Everybody back there running single file, and I think basically it's all a matter of self-preservation. These drivers know they're going to have another stage caution coming up at the completion of lap 70, so why race hard right now? Why risk tearing up your equipment? We've already got a couple of drivers that tore up their equipment and are now out of the race, an early end to the season opener for them. So why take the chance of tearing up your car right now? Keep it intact, have it there for the end of this race, and then if you wreck out trying, at least you can say, well, at least I had a solid piece to try and win this race with 20, 15, 10 laps to go as it ticks away.
Yeah, and then we've got a long way to go. We're working lap 45, 46 at the moment, so long way to go for these drivers still. The 27 of Carroll you mentioned was a lap down, so he's running in this lead group. 3 wide. That someone got shot up to the outside. The 28, they're trying to squeak around, and that's Nathan Hall. He's got some damage. He wasn't, I don't think, involved in that wreck earlier, but he has some rear end damage, does Nathan Hall. So not sure where he got that from, but he is very off the pace. The 27 of Bob Carroll is trying to stay in front of the 43 of Nick King and the 77 of Blaine Woodruff. Both King and Woodruff find themselves quite a ways back. They're actually towards the middle, if not the very back end of that second group. In fact, Blaine Woodruff in the 77 is coming to pit road, so not sure why he's coming down. It might be might be a scheduled stop for that 77.
To follow up on that, coming down all by his lonesome. He does have some damage to the back end of his machine, which might have possibly been from a stack up on the restart, potentially. Maybe some contact on pit road. We'll have to follow up on that, see what the issue is. It could possibly be causing some issues with the spoiler sticking up too high in the air, causing a little too much drag, because these cars, even the slightest amount of damage is going to affect you aerodynamically. But you mentioned about the 28 back there of Nathan Hall, right now 3 laps down, not the start to the season he was looking for, but I think we got to shout him out because, of course, Daytona holds a lot of history, and he's running himself a throwback to that number 10 Purolator machine that Derek Cope put in victory lane in the 1990 Daytona 500.
That's a throwback. I haven't heard Derek Cope in a long time. I think he made a start last year at some point, so that's I like that scheme that he's running. It didn't click until you mentioned it, but man, that is a very beautiful scheme on the 20. And I know that he wants a better showing for that scheme, but it's still running around this racetrack, still charging on, only 3 laps down. So, you may find himself some lucky if he gets some of that damage repaired. He might find himself back. Oh, never mind. The 77 and the 43 wreck right in front of him. So there is a little bit more damage to the 28.
And no caution as Woodruff comes to a stop in the grass just past the start-finish line. Now brings it back up on the racing surface, but no oncoming traffic, so no caution comes out. The hood completely missing on the mellow yellow number 43 of Nick King, but still no caution coming out. That Kyle Petty throwback machine now making its way into turn 1. The battle for the lead side by side. It's Kenny on the bottom and Campbell on the top.
Yeah, those two. Robert Kenny's a new addition to the front of the field. He's gotten around the 61 of Stafford, who's continuing to fall back. I think he's gotten stuck on that inside line just a little bit too far, as that 61 is going the wrong direction at the moment. Still side by side, about 6-7 rows deep is this lead group of cars. I want to point out that Sibery in the 33 is coming up on that pit window. that these drivers had earlier on the race. He's going to have to pit in a couple laps, if not this lap, then the next two for sure. So how much is that going to hurt the 33, and can he get back on the lead lap? You know, he's kind of kicking himself that incident between King and Woodruff didn't bring out a caution, but because that would have really been the beneficiary, or he would have been the beneficiary of that. But still, running around the racetrack hoping that something happens favorably for that 33 machine.
Correct me if I'm wrong, I think that based on when we saw drivers come to pit road during the first stage, if they were to come down now, they could make it to the conclusion of the second stage. So I think if you are the driver of that machine that we were just talking about, the 33R pole sitter of Cyber, you're trying to make deals. You're saying, hey, you're within your fuel window. You can make it the rest of the way. I got to pit soon. Come down and pit with me. That way I can lead with about 3, 4, 5 drivers and remain on the lead lap. Because if he can stay on the lead lap when the caution comes out in lap 70, that's fine. He'll be on the same sequence of everybody. When everybody comes back down pit road, he'll be fine. He cannot take another wave around, or else he'll be in the exact same situation he was when we started the second stage.
Yeah, and you don't want to have to do that going into the third stage. It's a longer stage, and you not want to have to be at the will or the mercy of another driver's decision of whether or not he wants to help you or not. It definitely is a tough situation that Seabury finds himself in, and he's gone for a long time. That yellow flag at the end of the stage has really helped him stretch this fuel load, but it's going to be cool and interesting if any of these drivers are going to be willing to help him out. I know a couple of them probably will, especially if they're running back here in this pack of cars, but the yellow flag comes out shortly after they come down pit road, then they can all take a wave around if they go a lap down.
Pit road, here we go. You got most of your luminary drivers coming to pit road this time.
Wow, that was something I didn't expect was going to happen, especially given what we saw earlier on. So, well, much earlier than we would have seen otherwise, is that a whole host of them, Bourne, Kenny, Stafford, Dyer, pretty much the entire lead group.
Add in Braxton DeWeese, Alex Link, I believe also the 61 of Stafford came down that time, Mike Tellier, Alex Link in the 71. So about 9-10 drivers all coming down pit road that time.
Coleman missed his pit stop, the 51. He sailed through his stall and has actually gone around back onto the racetrack. So bad news for the 51 is he's going to have to come down pit road yet again and make another stop. That we've talked about pit road miscues for a lot of these drivers. That was not the one you had to have.
Ryan Seabury coming down pit road. His teammate Jeremy Bushi came in just ahead of him, the driver that led us to green to start the second stage, and he smoked those tires coming in. Got to make sure that thing gets woed up, and these drivers are only allowed 5 sets of tires here tonight as well, so you smoke the tires like that, you're absolutely going to have to take on a set on that pit stop.
Yeah, and you don't want to flat spot the front ends, and having those extra tires later on in the race, if you need to put some fresh rubber on for a potential green-white checker, that's going to be crucial for some of these drivers being able to conserve all their rubber. The lead group coming down this time, no, they stay out. So Campbell, Wayward, Hendry, Stipe, Daly, Peck, Belmonte. There's a new host of cars running at the front of the field that, you know, we wouldn't have been mentioning otherwise, but they are on very different pit strategies at the moment. I'm not really sure which one's going to be the beneficiaries, though. I want to say it might be the ones that pitted early because they did seem to have a pretty big advantage when they came out at the end of stage 1. We'll have to wait and see if they actually can get around this racetrack, but that's good news for the 33, going back to him, that he was able to have at least more than just him and his teammate come down pit road. The stage is winding down, and there they go. There comes the lead group. At least some of them.
Yeah, Travis Daly is coming down. Also, I believe that's Gary Peck. Oh, we got a car on the wall back there. 23 of Deshaun Gorham just spun out, hit the inside wall, bounced back in front of a car, which I think might have been the 69 of Derek Schilling. Still no caution coming out for that, but definitely front end damage sustained by the 23.
Yeah, and rear end damages. He's got smacked the outside wall, and that is unfortunately what happens when you try to overcook it into pit road. And a lot of these drivers are unfortunately very familiar with overcooking it into pit road, and just him is He's the latest of those drivers who experienced the treacheries of getting onto pit road, but he's back out on the racetrack. Only took fuel that time by, so no damage repair. So we'll have to see if that 23 is up to speed. If he can get to the end of the stage and get that car repaired, then that would be a better situation than going a lap down now for sure.
Teammates hit pit road. The way overshooting was Dylan Stipe in the 4 car. He backs it up to his stall. Also, his teammate David Durand was in this lap in that nice teal blue Napa Chevrolet. We're now waiting on 3 drivers to hit pit road. There they all are. The 31 of Campbell, the 21 of Weaver, and the 72 of Hendry. They've been out there for 21 laps, and we'll see if they're going to stay out an extra time or come to pit road this time. Nope, they're staying out an extra lap. As things stand right now, it looks like Bronson Stafford would end up cycling back to the race lead. And don't forget, back at the end of stage 1, even though we finished it under caution, it was more than likely going to come down between 5 of the Luminary drivers of who's going to win that stage, because they were all up inside the top 5, had a huge gap back to 6th place. Looks like we might be in for a little bit of deja vu here at the end of stage 2.
Those Luminary drivers definitely have strength in numbers, and they can coordinate between those drivers much more efficiently than some of these smaller teams, and certainly some of these single car teams that maybe come in here that are trying to find help wherever they can. And Luminary was at the front at the end of stage 1. Maybe you see them again. Speaking of coming down, it looks like that the last drivers to make their stops are coming down as Campbell smokes them up coming into pit road, but it does get that 31 slowed down in enough time. Joe Weaver is going to make the overtake going on to pit road. Can they get their stop done and get it clean as the 31 comes in? I think he's going to hit his mark. Here comes the 21 of Weaver. Hits his mark. So no pit road miscues for these top 3.
Those top 3 also pitting with the lap machine of Bob Carroll. And that might put the 51 of Evan Coleman into the lucky dog position after he missed his pit stall, had to come back down pit road, and now race lead going to get turned over to Bronson Stafford. And again, it is back to what we saw at the end of stage 1. You've now got 5 Luminary drivers up here with Stafford, Bourne, Kenny, Tellier, and Greatorex, but you also got a little bit of a fly in the ointment, if you will, a Chevy Camaro breaking them all up. 5th place, that's where you find Braxton DeWeese.
Yeah, and Braxton finds himself in a bit of a sandwich, if you will, of a lot of drivers who don't necessarily want to work with them. And you know that he's going to try and hit his hardest to stay in this lead group. And I think that this lead group at the moment is just the whole goal is to ride it out to the end of the stage, because there's really no benefit of battling it out right now. You've got a huge gap back to the second group of cars. I'm looking at it right now, and I believe the gap is somewhere around... Once it updates, it's around 5.5 or 4.5 seconds make that. So long way back to that second group of cars. So don't really need to push it. And, Braxton DeWeese definitely is trying to get to the front, but I don't think he's too willing to push the issue at the moment.
So far, we have run 60 laps. Only 1 caution has come out. It was just before the stage caution was ready to come out at the end of stage 1. So far, only 1 yellow. We know that that's going to change when we get into this 3rd and final stage of the race. But it's looking like, at least early on here, pit road is going to be the main factor potentially into the outcome of this race. And just to show how important execution is on pit road, Dylan Stipe was up inside the top 10 when those pit stops began, overshot his pit stall. That one minute mistake drops him back to running 18th right now. And then, of course, for Evan Coleman, completely missing his stall. Right now, he is the first car 1 lap down in 23rd. That's another driver that was in the top 10 when this cycle of green flag pit stops began.
Yeah, pit road can be treacherous for a lot of these drivers, and a lot of them has found bad luck on pit road. Jared Campbell, actually also one of those drivers that have fallen way back. Now he's finding himself in the 17th position. In fact, a lot of those drivers that stayed out that extra time has found themselves at the back of the pack. A couple of drivers to make note of those 2 for sure, Stipe and Campbell. Joe Weaver actually got out pretty okay with that. He's running in the 8th position, although on the track quite a ways back from the lead group of cars. He's in a little 3-car pack between him, Dyer, and Gary Peck in the 22. They're trying to run down the lead pack of cars, but the lead pack is pulling away. It is now a 7-second gap up to the lead group of cars, and these three cars are going to get swallowed up by the much bigger pack behind them of Belmonte and Duran and company. But pit road, like you said, going to be one of those trouble spots. And especially if you have to make a green flag pit stop late in the race, that could be all the difference to you getting a top 5 or finishing outside of the top 15.
This is from 7th place on back, and I think they're actually going to reel in the 3 of Braxton DeWeese, who looked like he may have lost touch with those top 5 Toyotas, so we may see him enter into this game review momentarily, as right now side by side for that 7th position. Peck on the top side, Dyer on the bottom. I said that the 51 of Evan Coleman was a lap down. That was actually incorrect. He actually got back on the lead lap after Campbell and company came down pit road for their green flag pit stops. However, Bronson Stafford just put him a lap down. So now officially the 51 is in the free pass position. He has to hope that nobody else goes a lap down here in the next 7 laps.
And that's bad news for Bob Carroll. He was hoping that he could get back onto the lead lap. He was in the free pass position. He's back in that second group of cars. But Evan Coleman, with his misfortune, is now going to find himself in a lucky spot in the 51 machine, another one of those front runners that we mentioned earlier. But, Seth, I want to ask you, we've seen a lot of green flag racing, a lot of clean racing, but I know that once we get down to the nitty gritty, it's all going to change. We've documented that tonight, but when do you do that exactly? Do you think that these drivers are more than happy to ride it out until about 10 laps to go and then go all in, or do you think that they're going to try it sooner? Or maybe they're going to ride train style for maybe up until the last 2 laps and then go for it with leaving it out on the line?
Well, I think right now, if we judge off of these first 2 stages, the strategy is clear for Luminary. Find each other, come to pit road together, come out together, and pull away from the rest of the field. And they have executed that to perfection in the closing stages of both stage 1 and now stage 2. You've got 5 of them lined up, nose to tail. I think if they can continue this strategy, if we manage to have long green flag runs in the 3rd and final stage, they could have it come down between all of them. The only thing we have to remember, though, is a win here today, you are worry-free for the remainder of the regular season, knowing you have locked up a playoff spot. So with that in mind, at a track where everybody's got a shot to win, I think that all teammates will be out the window by the time we get to about 10 laps to go.
Absolutely. I mean, there's going to be no teammates whatsoever when you get down to it, and I think that's what makes Daytona, and for that matter, all super speedways kind of special when you have a huge group of cars that are just running around right nose to tail with each other, a huge blanket of cars. We've seen a lot of close finishes at Daytona. We've seen a lot of crazy finishes at Daytona where it didn't look like there was going to be any way that the lead group would fail, and then all of a sudden something happens, and then you have someone that was back in, say, running in the middle of the pack just shoots through and takes the lead on a lucky break. And you can have good fortune come your way, and a lot of these drivers can have bad fortune come your way. You don't want to be one of those drivers that tried his hardest and then all of a sudden find yourself backmired somewhere in midfield because you missed time to move. You had a run and you took it too far, and then you didn't really have anyone to go with you, so you ended up getting shuffled to the back. You have to find people that will be willing to work with you to get to the front, but then know that you are not going to be carrying that alliance for as long as you hold the lead of the race, because that guy that helped you to the front of the field is all of a sudden going to have a change of heart when it comes right down to the last 2 or 3 laps of the race. And then now, rather than helping you, he's going to do everything in his power to make sure that he might force you to maybe forcefully relinquish or forcefully forfeit the lead of the race, or a donation of the lead of the race, if as one driver put it recently that I talked to. And when it comes down to that, that's when the most fun racing comes in, I feel, is Daytona is always a good track for that, especially the 500.
Update on another driver that has made the hard left-hand turn to the garage area. Nathan Hall has put his 28 behind the wall. Looks like he will finish in 29th, as you just saw there. The wounded 85 of Garrett Fox is back out onto the racetrack, and he's only 7 laps away from picking up the 28th position. Of course, if your car is still running, it may not be up to speed, but every position is a point, and who knows? way down the road when the playoff grid is put together, that 1 point, that one position you picked up in the season opener at Daytona could be the difference maker between whether you're going to be a playoff contender or not.
Absolutely. We talk about consistency, and as long as you are running, then you get more points than people who aren't. And Garrett Fox, it is a bad position to be in, and it's got to be messing with you. You can see a lot of drivers. You can hear them around you, and then they go, and then they're gone. You're not the fastest car on the track, nor will you be for the remainder of the race. But if something happens up in this lead group of cars, if the big one happens, that's potentially positions you can make up. We did a race not too long ago, Seth, where that was the case, where there was a driver that fell quite a few laps down, then managed to stay on the racetrack while other drivers were falling like flies around him, and he was able to get within the top 13 by the end of the race, going from what was a 21st position all the way to top 3 or top 13. So, you never know what'll happen at a super speedway.
Our last stage ended under caution. Looks like this time we will race back to the green and white checkered flag. Kenny makes a move to the top side. Tellier was going to go with him. He leaves him out to dry. Here comes Greatorex to the 8 of the 34 as Stafford ahead. Tom Bourne the 54. Does he jump to the top side to try and snipe the stage point? Kenny almost out of shape off of 4.
That was a big shunt that the 34 took, but it's going to be the 61 of Stafford just edging Tom Bourne at the line for the stage 2 win. And man, that was a preview of what we could see at the finish of the race. Then I don't know if these guys would be a lot any cleaner, or even they might try to force the issue even more, as Kenny almost got a very rude greeting with the outside retaining wall. But good on Stafford for taking the win under green.
And a close battle back there for the final stage point. Travis Daly was barely able to hold off Dylan Stipe to be able to get that final stage point. Yep, that's Travis Daly, the 15 that we saw shoot off to the left side of the screen during the first round of pit stops. Nice recovery for him.
Absolutely. Top 10. He's got a little bit of rear end damage on that car, but nothing that he can't repair when he comes down on pit road. So fantastic recovery for the 15 machine.
Evan Coleman did indeed get the lucky dog here for this caution. The 23 of Deshaun Gorham, who we also saw have an issue coming to pit road during the cycle of pit stops here in stage 2. He got put a lap down, but the 51 was able to pass him. So Gorham will be a lap down in 23rd. Coleman in 22nd will be back on the lead lap when we go back green. Let's follow here as pit road should be open. I think everybody's going to be coming down pit road here, and so far, our first 2 stages have been led to green by a driver out of Sim Racing Development. Something tells me the odds are in favor of a Luminary driver leading us to green for this third and final stage.
Well, you've got about 5 of them up in the top 6, so something tells me that the odds stack with them. The 61 of Stafford is taking right side tires at least. Now we're getting 4 tires, so fresh tires for that 61 machine. Obviously, stage 3, a much longer stage than the first 2. As he's down and away, a lot of the other drivers electing to take fresh tires as well. You've got the 3. So there's a little bit of a spoiler. Braxton DeWeese gets out in front of everybody, as I think he only took maybe right side tires on that last stop.
There's definitely at least a 2-tire pit stop for the 3 machine, so we'll see if this gaining of track position is going to pan out in the long run. Bronson Stafford, Tom Bourne, Robert Kenny, and Mike Tellier, they're going to be the top 5 when we go back green. We were remiss and didn't have time to be able to talk to our stage 1 winner, so let's see if we can dial up Austin Greatorex, find out what his plans are here for this third and final stage. Hey, Austin, it's Anthony and Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got us?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear.
Well, man, sorry we didn't get to talk to you there at the end of stage 1, but man, you finished up in the lead in stage 1, top 5 here in stage 2. That 13 looks pretty good. What's your plans for this third and final stage?
Hopefully we can get a break again with the team. Obviously, as you notice, well, I'd like to say you noticed, 5 of the top 6 in both have been Luminary cars. So hopefully just break away and carry on going how we're going, and then see if I can get it at the end.
You've got a fast car, and you look like you could put it pretty much wherever you want to. Anything about the racetrack that sticks out to you? Any place that you want to make a move if you have the chance to do that? And it's a much longer stage, so a lot of planning has to be done in this final stage.
Yeah, a lot of planning. I'll leave it till near the end to decide what I'm going to do and try and see if I can get track position somewhere. But it's still a long race left, so we'll have to see.
Oh, Austin, you've looked good so far here. You guys got a ways still to go, though, before you can try and capture that checkered flag. Hold it wide open. Good luck.
Thank you very much, guys.
And now let's see if we can actually get our second stage winner here, the defending champion, Bronson Stafford. Hey, Bronson, it's Anthony and Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got us?
Yeah, I do.
Man, you come into this season the defending champion, and what a way to start out the year. You got yourself a stage point already. Looks like your car's pretty good out there in front. Can you keep it there?
Yeah, we're rolling really good right now as a team in general. We've nailed pit stops both times we've had to do it so far, and we're just going to try to do more of the same, I guess.
Pit strategy has been the biggest thing so far, as we've seen a lot of drivers overshoot their pit boxes. How confident are you and in your team that you can get these pit stops done when it comes down to crunch time?
We should be pretty solid. We've been doing it all race long, and we do it every super speedway we go to like this. So, as long as we don't run each other over, I think we'll be all right.
All right, Bronson, well, best of luck to you. You guys at Luminary look like you've got a pretty good strategy here in these first two stages. We'll see if you guys can close it out and bring home a W for the team.
All right, thanks.
So as we get ourselves ready here for this third and final stage, we've only had one caution for contact incident, and the other caution obviously was for the end of the stage. Anthony, now we get the feeling that the dreaded big one. We know at some point in time it always happens at the super speedways. Between now and the checkered flag, you know it's going to strike. The question is when and where.
Oh, you've got a lot of drivers that want to get to the front of the field and challenge those Luminary drivers. You've also got the looming threat that this is the final stage of the race. This is crunch time. You have to have everything on the line when you get down to the end of the race. Now, I think these drivers will be a little bit more conservative throughout the first half of the stage, but as soon as that last green flag stop happens, then you know that there's going to be a lot of drivers who are going to want to force the issue and get this win, because a win here guarantees you a spot in the playoffs, and that alone is enticing enough for some of these drivers to make some bold moves that you wouldn't normally see maybe midway through the season when we're at any other type of raceway, especially at a speedway or even a short track.
Riding on board with the 32 of Jesse Powers, and I just look back here through the second half of this field, and there are names we have not mentioned so far here tonight, and you know that they've been just basically riding around there, preserving their machines for this third and final stage. Powers in the 32, Alex Link in the 71, Tim Hendry in the 72. We saw him up in the top 3 at one point, but he was playing some pit strategy. But how about guys like Brandon King, the 89, Derek Schilling in the 69? These are drivers we haven't talked about. We know they are waiting in the wings, and we're probably going to see them up at the front in the closing stages.
You can sense that they kind of feel that there's going to be something happen up at the front of the field. We've seen them go side by side. We almost had a wreck coming down to the end of the stage, so these drivers don't want to be mixed up in there. If they can stay back and have a lucky break and maybe catch some of those drivers up in the front, kind of check out a little bit, maybe make a mistake, then these drivers can capitalize on that and get right up into the fight for the win. But you got to get there first, and something that these drivers know painfully well is that you only have one shot at it. If it goes bad for you, then it's done. But these drivers at the back, like you mentioned, not exactly, poor drivers in that case. They are fast drivers. They're just biding their time. It's a strategy game. This is a giant game of chess that these drivers are playing, and just so happens to be at well over 190, almost 200 miles an hour.
Well, for some of these drivers, the first two stages were just to keep their cars in one piece. For other drivers, it was a struggle to get themselves back on sequence for the third and final stage. Maybe no more so than our pole sitter, Brian Siberry in the 33, who ended up having his qualifying setup in at the beginning of the race, had to come down pit road before lap 5, fell a lap down, took the wave around under the first stage caution, was able to remain on the lead lap for the second stage, and now finds himself up inside of the top 10. So watch out, it's not easy to go coast to coast, pole to win at a super speedway, but this 33 looks like he may have some speed that could do it.
Yeah, and he has got a great recovery. We've been talking about recoveries all night long. We've seen it so far happen in this race between that was the 97 of Mike Tellier when he had that incident happen. He had to go all the way to the back of the pack and then smoked it onto pit road. Now find himself running the top 5. Now you got another one, Brian Sibber in the 33, a great recovery from him. It's not, it's a gut-wrenching feeling. Your heart kind of sinks when you see the pit limit or the limiter on your car redlining around the racetrack, and you wonder, oh, why is it doing that? And then you look and see that you got the wrong setup and have to come down pit road before your car explodes and then change the setup. And credit to him for remaining calm and then backing that car down as slow as he needed it to get onto pit road and be able to actually make that change. Some drivers in this field have not been so lucky. Whatever happened with Tyler Riggs, we saw his wheel lock up towards the left side. He's one of those drivers that weren't able to make the most of it. So there are two sides to every story, and Seabury did get the better end of it if we're comparing him between Riggs, who had similar issues, seemed to be either hardware issues or just plugging in the wrong setup. So good recovery for Seabury, but there's also drivers kicking themselves that they know that they had a fast car, and then for whatever reason, they will not be competing for this win. So, count your blessings, but now you got to make sure that 33 and all these cars get to the end of the race.
Closing in on 50 laps to go here in the season opener at Daytona for Season 2 of the Clutch Drop Cup Series, as now Braxton DeWeese and Gerald Campbell.
Oh, Campbell!
This is going to be the big one.
Oh, maybe not. Oh, piling in behind. The 24 is involved of David Duran, the 61 with some heavy back end damage. So now I think we might have gotten away with what could have been a much larger wreck.
Absolutely. I thought those cars were coming back up the track. It may have been only 4 drivers at most involved in this. Campbell, Stafford, Durand, and Bushi were the 4 that I saw with the extent of the contact. There may have been a couple more innocent victims, but one thing I was going to point out here too, in this stage, we were going to see a lot more take and less give. We were going to see a lot more pinching, a lot more side drafting, and I think that was what resulted in that contact for the second position, bringing out the caution for the second time tonight for contact damage, officially our 3rd caution of the night.
Yeah, and that was, I think, just hard racing at the front of the field. Maybe a little bit of a shunt. I think that, I'm looking back at it, I think Stafford might have gotten hooked.
Take a look here as Campbell tries to move down. Ooh, yeah. He might have gotten some contact in the right rear from, I believe that was the 21 of Joe Wewer.
Yeah, and he spun around, and everyone in front did a good job of avoiding everything, slowing down in enough time to avoid it. But then there's some drivers back behind that were not so lucky. The 24, to name one, that's David Duran, got involved. A couple of other drivers that you mentioned got involved, and they couldn't get on the brakes in enough time. So, we were talking about how being at the back of the pack gives you a better chance to avoid it. We just saw that it doesn't matter really where you are, you could be taken out.
On board there with the 71 of Alex Link. I thought from the first camera replay we showed you that he had gotten through it. Clearly not the case. He's got now right front damage to his machine, and we're going to take an onboard with the defending champion Bronson Stafford. Should give us a pretty good idea of whether or not there was contact between the 31 and the 21, as well as the 61 here going into turn 3.
Just riding along, and then the 34 just dipped down a little bit. Yeah, there was a little bit of a shunt that was on the 61 and just around, and he almost had it saved. If he hadn't gotten pile driven in by Duran, I think that he would have been okay for the most part, but a lot of damage on that 61 machine now.
I think we can safely agree that with Campbell and Stafford both collected up and in this one, That's huge, because those are two drivers that we could have easily singled out as ones to watch for to possibly win this thing. Of course, Stafford winning the second stage just a mere, 10 laps ago.
Yeah, the commentator's curse might have struck the Stafford team, and that it was early on in the stage too. We're still more than 50 laps to go at that point, so just a small mistake, and I'm surprised that we were able to get away with less cars involved with that. And that happened right at the front, and that was entering a turn, and all logic says that that car's coming right back on the racetrack. So good job by Stafford to keep it down off the racing surface as long as he could, and able to minimize what could have taken out so many drivers. It could have taken out the whole field by aspect, and maybe not the leader of the race, but certainly could have taken out more than 20 cars behind him. So good driving on the part of the 61. But we got an interesting group of cars at the front of the field. The top 5 looks much different. A lot of the Tellier drivers decided to pit, and you've got a lot of the drivers that run in the back now finding themselves kind of in an interesting position. They're leading the race.
Yeah, you got a mixture of strategies that happened there on pit road. Travis Daly, Justin Belmonte, and Jesse Powers, your top 3. They went with fuel only. Then you had a 4-tire pit stop for Braxton DeWeese. Actually, correction, DeWeese is actually going to be... Oh, no, he is in the 3rd position now. So we're trying to figure out the running order here. So it looks like DeWeese is actually in 3rd. He went with a 4-tire pit stop. Dylan Stipe went with fuel only. He is currently going to line up in 4th. And it looks like we have a driver that might be out of sequence here. I'm not certain. But the rest of the top 10 drivers, Gary Peck went with fuel only. Tim Henry and Derek Schilling went with a 4-tire stop. Bob Carroll, who remember ended up getting the lucky dog, I think it was under that last caution there. He's now going to be 9th. He went with fuel only. Brandon King also went with fuel only. So a cornucopia of strategies and some new faces up at the front of the field.
Yeah, you got a couple of the drivers that are running at the back now finding themselves leading the race, and a couple of teammates up there, Daly and Belmonte, leading the way. So that's, that could work out good for them. It could work out badly for them. We'll have to see if they're up to speed, and also the pit sequence. We'll have to see if the fresh tires really do matter or not, as they had just come down pit road about 12 laps before. Green flag back out in the air. Look at the jump the 15 of Daly got. Just pulled away, and he's going to bring Jesse Powers with him. These are names that we haven't mentioned up in the top of the group in a long time. And there was some contact back there between the black car. I think it was Stipe that might have been just involved in that. Just in front of that was Gary Peck. I think that was one of the cars involved. But
For the moment, they're all going to keep it straight as things got rather fanned out on that restart. I don't know if somebody spun the tires or not, but they almost were going 3 wide heading towards turn 1. As right now, Dylan Stipe on the top side trying to help push Braxton DeWeese to the lead. On the bottom, you've got Travis Daly. He's getting help from the 32 of Jesse Powers. And you're probably looking and thinking, well, where are all the luminary guys that were dominating early on? You got to go all the way back to 15th place to find the first one. That's Austin Greatorex.
Greatorex leading a little bit of a pack of himself. And now we're seeing that these drivers are getting left behind by the lead pack. So those drivers that were hanging back here, it might have been by design, but certainly these drivers that we've seen at the front are definitely losing the pack as the race progresses. So they need to get going if they want to get back up there. Also, I think that might have been a little bit of a wake-up call that, one of our drivers is now definitely out of competition. We don't need to be racing that hard if we want to stay in competition, as the defending champion is now a lap down in 24th. So got to save your stuff to the end of the race, and that might be what the luminary drivers are doing, because at the front of the field, it was hot for a while, but it's kind of settled down as Daly and Powers have kind of gotten into a bit of a single file bit at the front. Whoa! Stipe on the outside came down and almost clipped the 12 of Belmonte.
Looks like he's trying to find a way to that inside line as he's got no friends on the top side. You got 4, 5, 6, now make it 7 cars all light up nose to tail on the bottom. Now someone jumps up there to help. Looks like that might be the 72 of Tim Hendry coming to the aid of Dylan Stipe. Follow up on those drivers involved in that last wreck. You already talked about Bronson Stafford, 1 lap down after he got his damage repaired. Also a lap down, Jeremy Boucher in the 73. Drivers that were involved that got their damage repaired and stayed in the lead lap include the 71 of Alex Link, who's up to the 13th position, and the 24 of David Durant. He is right now last car on the lead lap in 22nd. And we should also mention 23 of Deshaun Gorham got the lucky dog under the last caution. Right now he runs in the 20th position. And another driver that got apparently some damage from some contact from that wreck that we may not have seen on the replay, being told the 54 of Tom Bourne got some damage on the front end, and so may not be up to 100% aerodynamically sound right now, riding back in the 16th position.
Any bit of damage can affect these cars greatly at Daytona. They go so fast, and the aerodynamics are everything here. If you have a healthy engine but your aero is off, then you're losing seconds per lap time sometimes in some cases, but we'll have to keep an eye on him and see if he can get back up to the lead, or not the lead, but get back up to the lead pack of cars, as that might give him a chance to maybe have that aero damage mitigated just a little bit. This battle for the lead is getting heated. Whoa! Squirming all the way down the back straightaway. I don't know if you saw that, but Daly Powers and the 12 of Belmonte got a lot loose down the back straightaway, and Belmonte almost had to duck all the way down below the yellow lines to avoid running into the back of Powers. So getting super racy at the front. Stipe on the outside. Whoa, they're checking up on the outside line. Someone I think might have tapped the brakes just ever so slightly. You don't want to be doing that too much. We're seeing a lot of two-wide racing at the front of the field right now. Stipe and Daly, the battle. These cars are running very well, though, despite being in a much larger pack of cars than we're normally used to seeing up at the front. We're not really used to seeing more than, I think, 6 or 7 cars running in a group like this, but now you've got a whole host of them, including the 33 that we mentioned earlier. So set a totally different group of drivers up here than we saw earlier on, and it seems to be a completely different driving style than we've seen so far.
You talk about a driver that we haven't seen up at the front. How about the 27 of Bob Carroll? Right now in the 6th position. This guy started shotgun on the field, fell a lap down early. Now he's up here in stage 3 inside of the top 10.
Man, great recovery again. So the recovery stories continue. Add Bob Carroll to the list. It looked like for a while he wasn't going to get his lap back, and then all of a sudden he catches a lucky break and now finds himself in the top 10. Running down the leaders of the race. So good run for him. Check out that driver. We're talking about some of these drivers we haven't mentioned all race long. Derek Schilling and the 69 is at the tail end of this lead pack of cars. As now you've got some more familiar faces that we've seen at the front of the field come up. Derek Campbell making his way back up to 11th place after that earlier incident that happened that brought out our latest yellow. So he's coming back up through the field.
Whoa! We're almost going 3 wide for the race lead there, as I think Daly's trying to throw some blocks on Stipe.
The 21's around back there.
Caution is going to come out. We got more drivers spinning down to the inside. I think that's Braxton DeWeese in the 3.
So Joe Weaver bounces off the wall and I think collected the 3.
71 of Alex Link is involved.
Yeah, he's slow on the apron. I think that might have been only 3 or 4 cars involved in that, but it definitely started with the 21. He got very high on the racetrack and then bounced off the outside wall and couldn't save it.
Joe Weaver has been having a great run here tonight. That 21 Ford has been up inside of the top 10 pretty much the entirety of this race, but looks like he may end up have driven a little bit too high in the tribal. I don't know if he was maybe moving up in reaction to something that was happening ahead of him, or if he was trying to make a move on the 33, but you'll see right here, there he is, moves up to the top, and that wall just came in contact with him sooner than I think he expected.
It was through the tri-oval too, so the lightest part of the racetrack for the aerodynamics, so definitely hard to save a car. A lot of cars took hard shots to the outside wall to try and avoid it. Who was that car that shot off to the inside line? I couldn't quite see.
71, I do believe, of Alex Link was that car that shot down to the inside. Also getting a piece was the 89 of Brandon King. There was also another driver that hit Braxton DeWeese. I couldn't see who he was up on the left side of the screen, but there was another driver that got collected up in the incident as well. We'll try and follow up on who that was.
I'm looking here. Deweese running in through. That was. I'm
The
trying to.
34, possibly, of Robert Kenny?
That would have been him, I believe. Yep, it was the 34 of Kenny that was involved in that.
So about 6 drivers, I think we could calculate, were involved in that one. We'll actually take an onboard with Robert Kenny, who was running at the back of the pack. And this is just, it shows you nowhere in the field is safe. An incident can happen at the front, it can happen at the middle, it can happen at the back. You never know where it's going to strike, and you never know as well, especially when it's here on the straightaway. You never know what direction cars are going to spin. You just have to hope you pick the right line.
Yeah, and he was in the correct line when he was coming out of the tri-oval because the spinning 12 hadn't actually come back up the racetrack the 21 hadn't come back up the racetrack, and then all of a sudden has a change of directions and gets clobbered by the side of Deweese, and then just nowhere for Kenny to go. He ends up running into Deweese. Deweese had to take an avoiding measure to get around the stricken 21, and then just an unfortunate turn of events for him. But again, a wreck between a lot of drivers that could have resulted in a lot more taken out, but we get away with a relatively tame one this time around as well.
How about this for some strategy? Dylan Stipe in the 4 machine decides to stay out. Everyone else was on pit road, maybe trying to save that final extra set of tires for a late race restart, perhaps?
Well, he's running in a pretty good position fuel-wise. I say that. He's only got about 15 or so laps before he'd have to come down pit road. This caution might be helping him. He might be clutching the car a little bit, so he might get a little bit more. He might be thinking that the trend of drivers racing hard might continue and maybe get another caution later on in the race before he has to come down and get some fuel. So interesting strategy. He's only been out on these tires for 4 laps on this stint for 4 laps. So he is in a pretty good position tire-wise, and I think Stipe was one of those drivers that took tires that last time around. So, yeah, he could be conserving a couple tires. And, we're coming down to, what would it be, about 35 laps to go when we go back to green, 36 laps to go even. So, it could pay off for the 4 machine. It might also be bad if they don't get another caution. Then he's definitely going to have to be in the similar position that Seabury was, where he has to rely on other people to maybe pit early with him. But as it stands right now, we're going to have at least one more green flag stop if they get going before the end of the race. So, interesting strategy.
Absolutely. Looks like the lucky dog position this time is going to go to the 73 of Jeremy Bouchy. So we will have 21 drivers on the lead lap and we go back green of 27 that are still running. If you've just tuned in, you are watching the first race of Season 2 for the Clutch Drop Cup Series here tonight at Daytona International Speedway. We currently have 27 drivers, as I mentioned, still running, of 31 that took the green flag to start this race. Nathan Hall, Garrett Fox, Jacob Grant, and Tyler Riggs all making early exits. Stage 1 winner was Austin Greatorex. Stage 2 winner was Bronson Stafford, the defending champ, who right now finds himself trapped 1 lap down in the 22nd position after being involved in an incident about 12 laps ago. Right now, Dylan Stipe, who won the last Clutch Drop Racing Cup Series Superspeedway race last season at Talladega, paces the field. He'll be leading them back to green over Travis Daly, Justin Belmonte, Gary Peck, Gerald Campbell. That's the top 5, followed by Jesse Powers, Bob Carroll, Derek Schilling, Tim Henry, and a pole sitter, Brian Sibery. Green flag back in the air, closing in on 35 to go.
And a great start on the part of Stipe. He got a whale of a jump on the inside line. He's going to fall onto the inside line at the end of the start and finish straight. So now he's going to try and lead that inside line too. He's going to get a little bit of a shot from Daly on the inside line. Yeah, I think that the 15 had to back off just a little bit as Gary Peck didn't want to run him over. I'm sorry, that's Justin Belmonte on the bottom. Gary Peck is on the outside all by his lonesome, trying to get anyone to help him. And he is going to get some help in the form of Daly. Though I think he would have been rather been leading the race rather than having help from the second place driver at the time.
Well, I think he may get the race lead, Will Dally, as he at least going to get alongside of Dylan Stipe for the top position. We'll see if the outside line gets the momentum here on the straightaway. Edges ahead by half a car length. Maybe clear at the start-finish line, not quite. Having to obviously rely on that spotter to let him know when he's clear if he wants to go down to the bottom. Looks like he'll stay up top, try and tow that 22 and the 27 along with him.
Chad, Bob Carroll in the fifth place position, or battling for the fourth place position on that top side. Grid drive from the 27, trying to get back up to the front of the field. That outside line's got some speed down the back straightaway and the front straightaway, although that inside line does seem to have a bit of momentum in the turns. Can the 15 stay in front? Right now he has. Can Gary Peck actually push him past? I don't think so. That inside line just too strong in the turns, but on the outside line, you can hold your own. It's just once you try to make a pass anywhere on the racetrack, other than the back straightaway, really, as you see the inside line get a whale of a run on the inside line going through the tri-oval. Stipe momentarily in the lead. They're dead even going to turn one, these two drivers are.
Right now, the top 10 is heavily filled with Chevrolet Camaros. You've got a Ford leading this race in Dylan Stipe. Got to go all the way back to 9th place where you find a Toyota in Austin Greatorex. The rest of the top 10 completely comprised of bow ties.
Yeah, the Chevy's got a really big showing here in this series, and so far, though, that powertrain is working out for a lot of these drivers. You got two of them in first and second at the moment. That Ford of Dylan Stipe trying to make something work. One of only, I believe, 5 Fords in the field at the moment, so definitely everyone's gunning for the big GM group of machines in this field, and Toyota obviously the least represented. Actually, I think there's more Toyotas than there are Fords in the field, if I'm looking at it right.
And I believe you would be correct on that. Of course, quite a number of them out of the Luminary stables, as right now it is Chevrolets 1 and 2. Now, Travis Daly and Gary Peck working together, and the old adage at super speedways, your friends are where you find them. They're not teammates. Travis Daly, his machine out of NSM, and then Gary Peck out of NSM Wraps. Now, obviously, a bit of a coordination team there between the two, so no surprise to see them working together. The 27 that they were working with, Bob Carroll, he is a teammate in NSM, but they kind of left him out to dry when the top two decided to drop to the bottom.
Yeah, that outside line got properly abandoned, and now Bob Carroll trying to get back going on that outside line. It looks like he's got some friends up there with him. He's got Jared Campbell that's now formed on that outside line. The 72 of Hendry's now coming on that outside line. They got a lot of cars behind Hendry that's going to be pushing on that outside line. And I've noticed a very telling tale of how close we are to the end of this race. We've seen earlier in the race, the field gets spread out. Notice that every single one of our lead lap cars are running nose to tail at the moment, or these cars that are up to speed. So we can be for sure that it was just strategy earlier, but now getting down to almost 30 laps to go, 31 when they hit the stripe, it's getting crunch time for some of these drivers.
Didn't I just say a lap ago that Bob Carroll got left out to dry? He just got shoved to the lead by Gerald Campbell. It just shows you how much changes in the course of 2.5 miles.
Man, and especially at 195, 200 miles an hour, Bob Carroll got that outside line to work. That line, if you have friends, can work wonders, but that inside line, you got to get around it. That you've seen that now since Carroll came down to the inside line, that outside line getting left out to dry again. Will we see something similar happen with Campbell, though? If that outside line gets any bit of momentum, then they could overtake all these drivers on the inside line. This is a slower car. That's one of the damaged cars on the inside line. Everyone kind of getting shuffled around, but they all get around him, no problem. That would have been the 89 of King coming down the pit road, I think, to get some more damage repaired on that 89 machine, but so far, that inside line now dominating is all the way back to 5th place is those drivers.
Yeah, it's pretty cool to be able to have been able to see some Days of Thunder schemes out there here as well. I believe the 15 is actually running a Days of Thunder throwback to the Superflow car. Of course, the car we just saw coming to pit road, the 89 of Brandon King, he was doing a throwback there to, I think it's the City-sponsored 46 car from Days of Thunder. You've also got one that's working its way back up towards the front here that got on the lead lap a couple of cautions ago, and that's the 23 of Deshaun Gorham. There you see that blue and yellow Hardee's car back there, and I also believe that the 43 of Nick King, who's right now on pit road still getting damage repaired. I think he was a Days of Thunder throwback as well. So pretty cool to see a number of drivers taking on that old NASCAR movie theme as well.
Yeah, it's always fun to see some of the throwback schemes that these drivers bring out, and Days of Thunder is one of the most famous NASCAR movies of all time. So nice to see a lot of these drivers going old school for the first race of the season. And I'm wondering, Seth, and this has nothing to do with this race, but I wonder just how many schemes that we're going to see throughout the season these drivers might have in store for us, as it's a long season, so a lot of opportunities to bust out some of our classic favorites and maybe take us back to a day where things were a lot different in the sport than it is now. And it's always nice to see those things, not just at Darlington specifically, but like at a lot of tracks.
Absolutely. A lot of drivers have different themes they like to run for different venues. And, of course, everybody here today wants to be able to lock themselves into the playoffs with a win at Daytona, but they'll be setting their sights on next week as well, as we're just going to head on down the coast towards the southern tip of Florida at the Homestead Miami Speedway for the second race of the season. So we'll be staying in state for these drivers, but there's still 28 laps to go in this one. And right now, Bob Carroll is pacing the field, but with every lap that ticks away, we know that the anticipation, the urgency, and the aggressiveness is going to ramp up higher and higher and higher. And so far, I don't really want to jinx it, Anthony, but so far, we've really only had maybe a 6-car incident that's been the closest thing to a big one today. We know that we're probably going to exceed that number at some point here. The question is where in the field to take place. Might be now at the front, because we're going to go 3 wide.
Yeah, that 31 of Campbell in the middle, all by himself. We haven't really seen a lot of 3-wide racing so far this race, but Campbell is now testing those waters in the middle of the track, all in the sucker hole, as they used to call it. Whoa, goodness gracious, the 22 of Heck almost got up into them, and look at them 3 wide back there. Campbell still in the middle. You've got Belmonte and Hendry sandwiching him down the straightaways. There's almost contact.
That is one of the toughest places in the trial, to be stuck in the middle 3 wide, because that's where your car's at its licest, where it wants to move around, and you've got drivers that are pinching you on both left and right. Campbell is going to clear and jump up there in front of the 72 of Tim Hendry, so we avoided one right there in the trial, well, at least for now. 3 wide behind them, though. That's Bronson Stafford in the 61 going up the middle, and big wreck! The big one has struck on the back straightaway. Gorham is around. Stafford is around. Another car back there. Hard to tell who it is. I believe it might possibly be the 71 of Alex Link. He is collected up as well. Cars smoking as they leave the scene of the accident. That incident off of turn 2.
Mike Tellier was also involved in that one. The 97, heavy front end damage on the defending winner of this race. So it looks like the defending champion and the defending winner of the Daytona 500 out, struck with heavy damage after this wreck.
Hard to tell exactly what happened. We're going to go back, but I did notice Bronson Stafford shooting up the middle for a 3 wide move. I don't know if that's where the contact started or not, but it had catastrophic results because Bronson Stafford, he was in the free pass position should the caution come out. He just didn't want to be the one that was involved in the caution. Unfortunately, that was the case here.
Yeah, and it looks like it might have been the 61 of Stafford tracked down the racetrack and just ever so slightly tapped the right rear quarter panel of the 23 machine of Deshaun Gorham, and then sends them up the racetrack hard into the outside wall that those 2 drivers go, and actually collects multiple of his teammates. The 54 was also involved. So not only was Tellier involved, but you also have another one of his teammates involved.
It's incredible how the landscape of a super speedway race can change from one portion of the race to the other. I mean, we mentioned back at the end of stages 1 and 2, Luminary had this race in hand, finishing up inside of the top five cars in both of those 2 stages, is on board with Tom Bourne. And I mean, right now, the only car I think that they have out of their stable that doesn't have any damage in any way, shape, or form is our Stage 1 winner, Austin Greatorex. The problem for him is, though, he's got none of his teammates to help him if they're all damaged and off the pace.
Yeah, no kidding, and he finds himself quite a ways back as well. He's actually going to be... He's actually towards the front of the field. He's in the 6th place position after the cycle of pit stops, or maybe he's going to get shuffled around as they're doing pit stops at the moment. But, man, just hard racing for these drivers, and You mentioned how a landscape can change, and that has changed everything for Luminary specifically. Also, for the scope of the rest of the drivers, it's changed for them because now they can actually breathe a little bit, knowing that there's not a massive team that's going to come and try and take away this win from some of these smaller teams. So a big relief on their shoulders, but they got a lot of hungry drivers still to go as pit stops were done, and Daly came out the leader of those pit stops.
Daly, Peck, Carroll, Belmonte, and Powers, these are all teammates, much like Luminary and Luminary 2. It's a team and a development team, and so, like I said, the gears have shifted. Now, instead of Luminary up front, it's NSM up front, currently in the top 5 positions. However, take a look back here from 6th place on back. You've got Brian Sibery, the pole sitter, he still has something to say about this. Derek Schilling, Jeremy Bushi, Evan Coleman, who was a lap down and got the free pass at one point. Robert Kenny still in the mix. So there's still names that could easily work their way up to the front here, because it may not seem like much, but when you consider it's a 2.5 mile super speedway, 25 laps, that's still a long ways to go.
Absolutely. There's quite a distance to go physically on the racetrack, and a lot of tension that these drivers are going to have to go through. Is if you've been calm throughout the rest of the race, now is when your palms start to get a little bit more clenched, as you know that any tiny mistake could result in catastrophe, as we saw just recently now with a lot of the drivers back in the back of the field that had. But can you imagine that happens at the front of the field, and a lot of these drivers that wasn't even around something like that might be caught up in it. So the tensions are definitely rising for these teams, as we have a completely new slate. We were talking about earlier, Seth, that you had the defending winner coming into this race. You also had the defending champion coming into this race. They had a target on their back. There's no target for a lot of these drivers now. It's simply get around whoever's around you and basically prove that, now that the big guns are out, maybe a chance for some of these smaller drivers to maybe come up through the field and snag away this win.
Joe Weaver is going to finish this race out, looks like in the 26th position. Tough break for a driver that was up there in the top 10 in the first few stages. But to piggyback off your point there, though, all right, so the big guns are out of it. All these drivers have a shot now to be able to win this race. There were about maybe 7, I think we tallied up, drivers involved in that last wreck. Are we done with seeing a potential big one?
Absolutely not. That was only the start of it. You're going to see a lot more hard racing like that going to happen late in the race. With 10 laps to go, be expecting anything to happen. And we have only seen 3-wide racing happen in select areas. And for a short amount of time, I wouldn't be surprised if most of this field is 3-wide by the end of the race.
And we should be good to make it on fuel now, as well, as it will be 22 laps left to race here at Daytona. So it may be a case of you got what you got from now till the checkered flag, as Daly, Gary Peck, Bob Carroll will see if they can kind of pull off what Joey Logano coins the okie dokie, get themselves all lined up nose to tail, control this draft.
And so far they've done so. To the inside, back behind goes Gary Peck. So Daly, Carroll, and Peck now leading the charge, but that outside line, take a look at who's leading that outside line. Brian Sibery. Could you believe that this race started with him having to go to pit road because of a setup error? Now he finds himself going for the lead through turn 3 and 4 on the outside line. He's got quite a bit of help behind him as well.
You've got teammates on the inside line with NSM, teammates on the outside line with Sim Racing Development. The 33, the 73, and the 72 have all found each other. They've also picked up Gerald Campbell. For the moment, still a dead heat between the 15 and the 33 for the race lead.
And that inside line is actually getting a little bit of momentum now, as the top of the group, that 73 car of Bushi does not look very happy at all over the racetrack. There's quite a bit of front end damage on that 73 machine. So fighting a very poorly raced car at the moment, still up to speed in terms of pace, but that machine definitely not in the best way of handling as he's swerving throughout the turns, trying to keep it going the right direction. As still, side by side, 3 rows deep is this lead group of cars. Travis Daly trying to get the overall lead, the outright lead. No one to his right side. Still, the 33 of Sibery got a little bit on his right rear quarter panel.
As these drivers are now up to full song, you're starting to see the drivers that are fading due to the ill effects and damage sustained on their race cars. Right now, 12, actually make that 11, nope, it is 12 drivers up in this lead pack appear to be the ones to potentially contend for today's season opening win. There's a driver moving up there. That was a 73, and I don't know if he got shuffled out or if he's dropping back there on purpose. He talked about it looked like his car was ill handling. He might be dropping to the back to try and figure out what's going on.
Yeah, he has. That's definitely by design as he's falling back in line, trying to stay with this lead draft of cars. That second group is actually closing in ever so slightly. So, you know, Jeremy Bushi might be a bridge between himself and Robert Kenny if he can get any bit of the draft off of that lead group, and we could have a much larger field for the end of this one. Actually, they are reeling them in. It was down to about 2 seconds. Now has gotten in to about 1.5 seconds, still closing in 1.5 seconds. So this second group, much faster than that lead group so far, and that is really attributed to the fact that Bushi went all the way back and have actually gotten that draft to affect the second group of cars.
And that second group is all running single file. They're side by side up here in this lead group, which is obviously going to stifle their speed with them constantly side drafting and slowing each other down. Bob Carroll actually jumped to the top side to be able to get around his teammate to go to the front. Now he's the one trying to defend against the pole sitter.
Yeah, he's trying his hardest and actually does get a bit of a run. Got the 15 of Daly still pushing him down on the inside line after he's gotten shuffled to second place. Sibbery on the outside line has got some friends pushing him down the back straightaway. Look at the 72 of Hendry weaving down the back straightaway. Something got that car squirrely. He saved it though as the 22 on the bottom of the racetrack. Got a little bit of piece of the apron. That's Gary Peck that almost had an incident happen. Almost got his car shot up the outside line as they're tracking up through out of turn 4 onto the tri-oval.
Riding on board with second place Travis Daly, and this is exactly how you want to be drafting with another car in front of you. You don't want to bump them. You don't want to make contact. You want to tuck that front bumper as close to the rear bumper as you can. Smoke there on the apron. That is, I believe, the 71 of Alex Link coming back onto the racetrack as he is multiple laps down. I was wondering if a car might have been spinning there in front of the leaders, but might have been just some connection issues on the part of the 71 machine. We remain green for the time being, and the laps, Anthony, continue to tick away. We're closing in on 15 to go.
Yeah, and we're closing in on that very eerie sense of urgency for these drivers, seeing that the lap counter getting smaller and smaller. Not a whole lot of chances left for these drivers to make moves, and some of those drivers that are in that second group of cars are painfully aware of that. They have caught this lead group almost. They're right on the cusp of getting into that lead group, but that's only half the battle. Now you got to figure out a way to get from the back of it up to the front of it. But Bob Carroll and Gary Peck on the inside. Whoa! Coming back on the racetrack. That's Tellier almost being a moving roadblock for these drivers.
Another driver just up ahead as well that's coming back onto the racetrack. I think that might be the 61 of Bronson Stafford. Now for Tellier, Stafford, those drivers, they're out there just trying to salvage whatever points, whatever positions they possibly can, as right now they are all running multiple laps down. Alex Link 8 laps down, Tellier 9 laps down, Stafford right now minus 10 to the race leaders.
Yeah, so salvaging whatever they can is a lot of those drivers, and Seth, again, it's got to be heart-wrenching to have such a good race and then all of a sudden all for naught. But if something happens, like we said earlier on in the race when we were talking about the 85 of Garrett Fox, I believe it was, I think Garrett Fox is actually taking his car out of the race now at this point in time. So, you know, any position you can get that is going towards the championship. So you got to stay out, and hopefully you can get some points to your overall championship efforts. As up on the outside line, that's another slow machine. I think that's the Nick King machine, I think. No, that is not. That's a green car. Not sure who that was.
Brandon King. You had the wrong King.
All right, one of the Kings. They get around Brandon King. No harm, no foul. There's a lot of damage on that 89. And again, he's running around just to get points at this point, but still, soldiering on. You got to give credit to these drivers who are just trying to get to the end of the race at this point.
Absolutely. I mean, just trying to salvage what they can here. We talked about the fact that even a finish here today at Daytona could affect whether or not you're going to be in the playoffs when we end up getting to the season finale, as That 27 car now, I gotta wonder, when do you start going into defensive mode? We know the blocks are gonna start being thrown. I mean, it looks like maybe now is the time because Dylan Stipe found something. He's gonna get a push on the top side from, I think that's the 15 of Travis Daly, so maybe a little bit too late for the 27 to start thinking about blocking.
Yeah, Stipe almost pushed Gary Peck down below the apron there. When they were going through the tri-oval, very hard racing on the part of the 4 machine, trying to get up to the lead of the race. Oh, the 27 washes up the track a little bit, almost cuts off the 4, but now that outside line again with a bit of a run. Dylan Stipe trying to get the lead of the race. He's got Travis Daly now finding himself a new home on the outside line, trying to get up there, but that inside line now seems to be the fastest way around the racetrack. We saw a couple laps ago that the outside was working, but now has shifted as the race goes further into twilight.
Now, we talked about the fact that
car around on the tri-oval. I believe that was the 30. Couldn't quite
15.
tell who that was. The 15.
15th around. And we got more drivers involved. Jesse Powers in the 32 is collected up. Hard to tell. I think that's Tim Hendry in the 72 just ahead of him. And now oncoming traffic. Look out.
Woo. Just barely
I think the
avoiding.
51 of Evan Coleman might have gotten a piece of it, and the 15 was definitely involved. Travis Daly, what a tough break for him as he was up in the top 5.
Yeah, Robert Kenny also involved in that one, at least had to slow down to avoid it. That happened going through the tri-oval. That was a scary crash. That could have taken out a lot of the lead pack as well.
Take a look here inside this lead group, see where the contact may have started, and oh, looks like Travis Daly came down, didn't realize Gerald Campbell had thoughts about maybe going up the middle 3 wide. The two of them make contact. There you see Jesse Powers. Boy, he took a heck of a hit. I think he went down, bounced off the pit wall, and then came back up the racetrack.
Yeah, what a hard hit for a lot of those drivers. That was a proper shunt for him. And another 72 bouncing off the outside wall super hard. That's Tim Hendry that took a hard lick to the outside. Man, those are a lot of hard crashes.
There's the shot right there for Jesse Powers. Back up the track. There's the 72. There's the 51 leaving the scene of the accident. Boy, that's a couple of drivers right there, the 15 and the 32, who looked like they very easily could have been contenders for this victory. And we're starting to get lower and lower on contenders here, Anthony. There were about 4 drivers that had been able to latch on to the tail end of the lead lap. I think it was the 34, 13, 54, and 8. Now they're going to have a shot maybe to stay with the lead group. But, I mean, right now, if you take the drivers that we had prior to that incident, we've now gone down from about 12 drivers to about 8 drivers.
Yeah, a smaller field of contenders that are left with relatively unwounded race cars. And, you know, a lot of the front runners taken out, Powers, Daly, they were some prominent contenders as well. Daly leading the race at one point. Jesse Powers was on his way to being in the lead of the race. So, and you also had the 72 as well of Tim Hendry, who had a very fast race car, but now find themselves very, very unfortunately with very wounded race cars. And like you said, a smaller pack, that might be some incentive for these drivers to cool it down a little bit, but we know that that's not going to happen. These drivers are still going to fight for it as if it is everything. And, well, Seth, it really is everything because we're getting down. We're under 10 laps to go at this point.
Under 10 laps to go, and even at this point, some strategy playing out. The top 6 all staying out. Everyone behind them came down pit road. Some went with fuel only. Some decided to take on tires. And why I find that interesting is I believe we went back green with 22 laps to go on the last restart. Let's not forget, we have possibly some green-white checkered overtime restarts that we could have here. That might be why some of these guys came down to top off the fuel tank.
Yeah, knowing that you have to go the extra distance potentially, you want to be able to have enough fuel to make it through however many green-white checkers we're going to have. So definitely a good strategy on their part. They have fallen back quite a ways, though. Some of those drivers have. Some have only fallen back to 7th place, as you see the 73 of Jeremy Bushy now coming back up to get to the tail end of the drivers who haven't pitted. Those drivers haven't pitted are Bob Carroll, Gary Peck, Dylan Stipe, Justin Belmonte, Jared Campbell, and Derek Schilling. Everyone else behind them has pitted. So if we do go into multiple green-white checkers, Jeremy Bucci on bat, those are the ones in the best position. You got Robert Kenny, who was involved in that last crash, and for some reason, he hasn't spent a whole lot of time fixing damage. That 34 might not be as damaged as we thought it would have been.
Yeah, 54 of Tom Bourne, the 8 of Matt Dyer. They were starting to reel in that lead group, so don't count them out just yet. And obviously, you know that these 6 drivers that stayed out, they are in fuel-saving mode right now. They are clutching under pacing here, hoping that maybe they can keep their track position and still have enough fuel to make it if we do have those overtime green-white checkers. Jesse Powers in the 32, we saw him take that hard hit. He is the latest driver to succumb to the Towman's hook. He is now out of the race. We're going to have to obviously wait and see where he finishes. Based on the number of laps left, looks like he could fall down as far as 21st or 22nd in this evening's finishing results. Anthony gave you those drivers that stayed out back through the top 6. Jeremy Bucci will be 7th, Tom Bourne in 8th, Robert Kenny 9th, Austin Greatorex in 10th. Then it's Matt Dyer, Evan Coleman, David Durand, Brian Siberry, Tim Hendry. That is your top 15, and those are the drivers that are on the lead lap as Brandon King went around, got the lucky dog, got one of his 2 laps back. He is currently -1. So as things stand right now, and we're still saying this with 8 laps to go, 15 drivers left to battle it out for the season opening win at Daytona.
And that could change after this restart. We have a couple drivers with some heavy damage that find themselves mixed in with these cars, but Pace Truck makes that hard left turn onto pit road. We're putting him back under green flag. We're back racing here at Daytona with only a handful of laps to go. So, Bob Carroll gets out in front, tries to stay to the inside line. You got a slow car on the top side. I think that's the 69 of Schilling that's got quite a bit of front end damage. In fact, he's missing a hood, missing a front end of that car, but just trying to get any finish he can. But Carroll up at the front, still with a dominating lead. He's got the inside line helping him.
But here comes Gary Peck now up to the outside. He's got Justin Belmonte in tow. They're going to make a lot of speed on the back straightaway, trying to see if they can get by the 27. No, the numbers game will be on the bottom. It'll be Carroll back to the point. He's got Stipe and Campbell helping him.
And the outside line might get some more friends if they can get up to it. You got Jeremy Bucci bringing in some cars. Check out who's running in 7th place in a battle right now with his teammate Austin Greatorex. That is Tom Bourne, who we saw get involved earlier in the crash earlier in the race. He's back up with this lead group of cars trying to get back up to the draft.
Got a shot. Robert Kenny right there on the top side with Austin Greatorex. And then behind them, you've got the teammates of Matt Dyer and Evan Coleman. If they can latch onto this draft, those 2 Fusions might have, make that Mustangs actually, might have something to say about this victory, especially if we end up having a wreck up here with the top 5. And, these drivers, they looked so stable in the early stages of this race. I was going to watch and see if they do what I call dancing on the straightaways. They looked rather steady. Now we're seeing them floating back and forth on these straightaways.
Trying to mirror drive, a lot of these drivers are, especially the leader Carroll, trying to see where the runs are coming from. Also seeing what the forward machine of Stipe is going to do right behind him. As Stipe right now, all he wants to do is find a way to get around the 27. But you don't want to be in the lead of the race. This is one of the more dangerous positions to be in because let's say that anything happens on the outside line and you get cleared on the outside, you can bet. Oh, that was close between the 34 and the 12.
He had a run with a help from Greatorex, and Kenny wanted to shoot up the middle. Campbell went up to block him, and that nearly was a wreck up in this lead group.
That could have been detrimental for those drivers at the tail end of this lead group. We're coming down, Seth. Only 5 laps to go. What can these drivers do? It's going to be close at the end of this race.
Well, it looks like the 22 and the 12, they're wanting to work together. We know that the 13 and the 34, they're going to work together. So now it leaves the 27, the 4, and the 31 to kind of figure out where their alliances are going to be. Campbell's going to jump up to the top. He's going to try and lead that outside line down the backstretch into 3.
We've got 3 cars on the outside line, 4 cars on the inside line. That outside line led by Jared Campbell. You've also got the 22 of Peck. Whoa, some shuffling happening with the 31, and the outside line stacks up. and now they've got to hold it, and they do hold it, but now that's put the inside line in a good advantage. Now they have to play defense on the outside line, but Bob Carroll's got to play the most defense.
Dylan Stipe right now doing a good job drafting right up to the back bumper of the 27, keeping locked with him. So far, they've been able to have the advantage on the inside line, able to hold off all the runs that have been attempted in that outside groove. But the question is, if you're Dylan Stipe, when do you make the move? Can you make the move? If you make the move, will anyone go with you, or do you even need any help? Remember, he won at Talladega last season, so he knows how to get it done at the super speedways.
Yes, he does. You also have a second group of cars trying to run down this lead group of cars with all the laps that they have left. That's led by Matt Dyer in the 8. Can they catch up, and can they get around some of these drivers in the lead group? Will they play a factor in the end of this one? 3 laps to go.
3 more circuits around the racetrack, maybe. If we get back to the white flag, we will race to the checkers. But if a caution comes out prior to the race leader receiving that white flag, we go into overtime here at Daytona. Right now, 7 drivers look to settle it out. Carroll, Stipe, Campbell, Kenny, Peck, Belmonte, and Greatorex. Then you got those stragglers back there, hoping they can get up here and have a last-minute say.
That outside line's got a bit of momentum now. Campbell trying to get anything out of it. They got to go around the lap machine of King on the outside line. They get around him. No problem. Coming down to get 2 laps to go. Now that inside line's got a whale of a run. Carroll and Stipe with a big lead now over that outside line. But now here they come on the outside line yet again.
You get the feeling Robert Kenny and Austin Greatorex, they want to make something happen, but they're kind of boxed in right now on that inside line. They've got Stipe in front of them. They've got Belmonte and Peck on their outside. If they're going to make a move, they're probably going to have to make a 3-wide maneuver, but right now there's really no space to do that as Campbell trying his best to pinch down that inside line.
Rocketing down the back stretch, holding it right down to the yellow line. Here goes Stipe to the outside. He thinks that the time is now as he goes up, as he's trying to get around the lap machine of Tellier. Oh, there's some contact between the 34 and the 4. 3 wide, more contact, trying to save it. And out to the outside wall goes the 34 and the 4. And the caution flag is out. We will be having an overtime period.
We've got cars flipping through the infield. Coleman was up and over. Dylan Stipe was up and over. And to your point, the race leader was not yet to the start-finish line to receive the caution. We will go into overtime, but oh my goodness, about 3 drivers that were in the hunt for this victory. Stipe, Kenny, and Coleman all torn up in the closing stages of this one.
It was just a matter of them getting a little bit squirrely out at turn 4. We've seen it happen so many times where cars will try to hold that line but can't do it, and you get a little bit unhappy, and then they beat and bang. Now, to their credit, they almost saved it, but almost only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades.
Oh, Matt Dyer in the 8 also took a hard hit there as his car, after the contact with Dylan Stipe, shot down pit road. So add another driver to the list that could have easily been a contender late for this win. We're actually going to ride on board with that 8 machine and just show you how violent a hit it was. And at this point in time, we're going to see there's going to be very little lift out of the 8 car. And to his credit, it's the never lift point of the race. If a wreck's happening in front of you, those are positions, those are points. You cannot hit the brake and give up positions.
Absolutely not. That could be everything. That could make or break your race, and you don't want to live. And good credit to some of those drivers who didn't live. I want you to look at the 73 after this. Look at how lucky that Jeremy Bucci is. He missed 3 cars and was able to squeak bomb by, and now runs in 6th place. So fantastic bit of never lift by the 73.
Jeremy Bucci's had his fair share of ups and downs here today, but apparently this will be one of the ups. Here he is running with Matt Dyer and Evan Coleman. He was part of that group that was trying to reel in the lead pack. There's the smoke. There's the contact right there in front of him. Oh my God. And then exit stage left, Evan Coleman. You're right, that was Razor's Edge.
Man, that could have taken out more than just... That could have been detrimental for a lot of drivers behind if Bucci was involved, because that was just add another roadblock. But man, never lift. I don't think he let off the throttle until the very last second, did that 73 car. But man, what a good piece of driving that was.
And with that caution, it now sets us up for a restart in which just based off what we saw on the last couple of runs, I'm counting maybe 5 cars that are completely up to speed that are going to have a shot potentially at this win. Carroll, Campbell, Greater X Belmonte, and Gary Peck.
Indeed so. Bucci might be another driver that could be potentially... Oh, I think he just blew up to the 73. There was a plume of smoke coming out of him, and I think that engine has expired on Bucci.
Oh, man. From the 6th position, and you are right. It also looks like the 31 of Gerald Campbell may be having some concerns about fuel as he was running the apron all the way through 3 and 4, but, oh, Jeremy Bucci, out of the newly formed team of Sim Racing Development, his team has definitely been making some headlines here tonight as they started on the front row. We ended up having Tim Henry lead us to green in the final stage of the race, and it was looking very much like Bucci was going to finish inside the top 10, but man, that is a tough break for a driver making his clutch drop debut.
Yeah, definitely not the showing he wanted to have. He did do fantastic up until that point with that car just giving out late in the race. You almost wanted that to have crossed the line for the yellow to happen after the white flag was received. That way he would have been able to keep his position, but tough break for the 73. But we are about ready to put them back under green. 2 laps to go unless we have a caution before we get back to the stripe, in which we'll do this all over again. But I want to point something out. You mentioned that Campbell was on the inside line trying to get every little bit of fuel that he could in that 31. Well, if you look at the top 5, 4 of those drivers on razor's edge when it comes to fuel. Bob Carroll, Jared Campbell, Austin Belmonte, and Gary Peck. I'm sorry, Justin Belmonte and Gary Peck. Those drivers are well in need of some fuel. One driver that doesn't have to worry about that in the top 5, that's Austin Greatorex in the 13. He's got well more than enough fuel and could be in the best position at the end of this one if fuel comes into play.
Yeah, but for Greater X, the problem for him is he lost his wingman, Robert Kenny, that got him up here into this lead pack. Now, he does have Tom Bourne back there on the inside of row 4, but that 54 is somewhat off the pace. We'll have to see if he's going to be able to get up to speed here and keep with the 13 as things a little bit confused back there in the midway portion of the top 10, but we're going back green. Green, white checkered attempt here at Daytona. Carroll gets us back underway.
And Carroll with a good jump on the inside. He's going to bring Campbell on the outside, but Greatorex on the inside, pushing the 27 down into turn 1. Oh, a little bit of contact almost between the 12 and the 22. That could have been detrimental, as I think that the 12 of Belmonte maybe have come down just a little bit too quickly. Almost didn't have it clear. They're shoving each other down the back straightaway.
More contact between those teammates, and those were the 2 I was looking at to maybe try and make a move to win this race. As Carroll, looking out his rearview mirror a lot more than out the windshield, I guarantee you, leads him off turn 4. He left the bottom open just a little bit there through 3 and 4. Greatorex thought about putting his nose there, couldn't make the move. White flag will be displayed. It's 6 drivers to settle it out at Daytona.
Next flag ends the race, whether it be the yellow or the white or the checkered. Now, do turn 1. What can Bob Carroll do? Can he mirror drive enough? Now the outside line. 3 drivers on the outside line with a run. Can they get anything going as they come out of turn 2?
That's Gary Peck. He's got Belmonte and then Gerald Campbell. Can they make enough of a run here? Greatorex kind of boxed in. Carroll stays to the bottom. Now he goes way low. It's a 27 out of fuel. I think he might be. 27 runs out of fuel going into 3. Now what about the rest of these drivers? Wrecking! It's going to be all of them! They're all wrecking! The 22, no, it's the 12's getting through. Now he's wrecking! Everybody's wrecking. Who's getting back to the line?
I'm not sure who's getting back to the line. I'm looking through here. Who wins
54.
the race?
54. Tom Bourne's still under power. And he gets past Robert Kenny, gets around him. I think the 34 is going to win this race.
Robert Kenny? No, Derek Schilling's won the race.
I didn't even see the 69. He got through it all. Schilling's going to win.
He's exiting turn 2. He got well in front of them. So Derek Schilling has won the race at the 69, an extremely damaged race car.
Hoodless and all, Derek Schilling is the winner here tonight at Daytona. It was mass chaos through turn 4 off to the front straightaway. Drivers in the lead pack wrecking, all 6 of them. Drivers behind wrecking, and we're going to go back, take an onboard with Derek Schilling because we didn't even see him snake his way through the incident, and it is absolutely replay worthy to see how he got through the wreck to be able to pick up this checkered flag.
As he does his burnouts at the infield, that is incredible. I have no clue how he was able to get around all of that. Everyone in front had the entirety of turn 4 blockaded, and I cannot believe he got through that.
Let's go back and see the onboard with the driver of the 69 machine of Derek Schilling in what may be one of the more exciting last laps of his career. And let's bear in mind everything that transpires right here as we're going to start from the back straightaway. From here to the start finish line, little does he know he's not only going to win at Daytona, but he's going to pick himself up a spot in the playoffs. There's the wreck up ahead. Watch how he makes his way through this carnage.
That he is going right through. He just snakes his way through, finds a hole, never lifts, and gets around everyone who is wrecking in turn 4. And to the line goes the 69 machine. You couldn't have scripted that finish.
Tomorrow the headlines will read a Whelen modified one at Daytona, because that's what that thing looks like, as Alan Kulwicki going to do a Polish victory lap here on the front straightaway in front of these Daytona fans. 7th when the white flag came out, race winner when the checkered flag was waving.
Holy cow. Have you ever seen this happen, where everyone wrecks on the final lap and someone at the back of the pack snakes his way through? Man, twice recently for us, but man, we had almost written off Derek Schilling as out of the race, given the fact that his car was so slow. I didn't think he was able to hold speed whatsoever, but all of a sudden finds his way up through the field, and I don't think that, again, you couldn't have scripted this finish if you had tried to.
Schilling with the win, and then you look on back, it came down to who was going to be able to literally crawl their way across the start-finish line with damaged machines. Robert Kenny brings it home 2nd, Tom Bourne in 3rd, the pole sitter Brian Siberry in 4th, Belmonte in 5th. Look at some of these other drivers up here inside of the top 10. You got David Durand. He fought a damaged race car for at least 2/3 of this race. He gets 6th. Greater X, our stage 1 winner in 7th. Gary Peck, Bob Carroll, and Gerald Campbell going to bring it home 8th, 9th, and 10th. Let's not forget that 27, he ran out of fuel going into turn 3. Still going to get a top 10 finish.
I think Evan Coleman actually finished 9th place according to my thing. So that is, did he finish 9th?
Yes, it looks like he did on my end as well. Apparently there's a issue of the translation between the finishing, actually, it's scoring the 27 and the 51, both in the 9th position on mine. So I'm not sure what to figure on that one.
Interesting. I think it might be Evan Coleman that might have just snaked around. It's either Carroll or Coleman that finished 9th proper, but man, take a look at that top 10 though. None of those drivers were battling at the end of lap or at the end of the race. None of them were next to each other battling in the lead group through turn 3. It only happened after the turn 4 wreck, and then a lot of drivers that were involved in that crash find themselves well outside of these drivers. Brian Siberry, he may not have won this race, but considering how his race started, 4th place has got to feel like a victory.
And according to what it's showing on my end, it's saying that Carroll and Coleman were in a dead tie for 9th place. That's why the both of them are scored in P9. Another name that you may have seen was missing from the running order was Matt Dyer. It's got him and Dylan Stipe in a dead even tie for the 14th position. So to be perfectly honest, I'm not necessarily certain who got what spot amongst those two battles. I think a lot of it had to come down with maybe drivers running out of fuel, maybe teleporting to pit road because they ran out of fuel, and maybe doing it at the exact same time that another driver crossed the start-finish line. So we don't exactly know the official finishing results for spots around those positions, but obviously we'll know when we get to Homestead next week.
Absolutely. someone else is going to have the unfortunate task of figuring out where everyone finished in points. But holy cow, this finish has gone down in the history books as probably one of the craziest Daytona 500 finishes that we've seen, certainly in this league, as there's only been 2 so far. But as far as super speedways, this has to be up there throughout the entire clutch drop series as far as finishes go.
Yeah, one of the more unusual chain reaction wrecks as well. A couple of drivers I thought were not going to get involved. I thought there were going to be at least 2 drivers at the front of that pack coming off turn 4, that they were going to have them wrecking behind. It was going to come down between those 2. I was shocked to see that actually every single one of those 6 drivers were caught up in that incident, but Eric Schilling was the one that was able to reap the rewards of right place, right time to win this race. A couple of those drivers that were in that incident off of turn 4, we're going to be talking with them here in just a moment, as they were 2/3 of our top 3 finishes. As a matter of fact, let's see if we can get our 3rd place finisher here tonight, Tom Bourne. Hey, Tom, it's Anthony and Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got us?
Yeah, I got you guys.
Man, we had no idea off of turn 4 which of you guys were going to get back to the start-finish line first. Right up there in the hunt to be able to win this race after some earlier issues, but describe that through 3 and 4 from the cockpit of the 54 machine.
Honestly, it was just a, I don't know, it was an all or nothing type situation. I don't know what Campbell was, trying to do. I was trying to get to Austin, trying to help him get to the, keep that lead and everything. And I guess Gerald thought he had more room than what he actually had, got into me. I guess he shot back up the track, and it was just a chain reaction after that.
Yeah, we certainly saw a lot of drivers end up running over each other that last bit of turn 4. But throughout the entire race, it seemed like you had a fast car. Was your car be able to be put anywhere on the track that you wanted to, or was there an advantage to the outside or the inside line for your car throughout the races? It certainly seemed like that inside line for most of the drivers was the preferred line.
I mean, before I got front end damage and engine damage, the whole team could put the car wherever. The setup was really good. Hats off to Mike and Bronson for putting it together and everything. Honestly, my personal opinion, I'd rather be on the lower line, especially with my teammates behind me, just because the setup was so fast and it's the shortest way around the track.
Tom, we saw that Luminary really had those first 2 stages in hand, finishing 5 cars inside the top 5 in both stages 1 and 2. But we saw, at least in the first half of this race, pit road seemed to be an issue for a lot of drivers, getting into their pit stalls, overshooting their pit stalls. So coming into this 3rd and final stage, which kind of strategy was in the back of your mind? The execution on pit road or avoiding the wrecks when and if they happened?
Well, if it went green, the field was probably going to get spread out like you guys saw in the first 2 stages. Honestly, we were focused on trying to get on and off pit road as perfect as we can, just like we were doing in the first 2 stages. And, unfortunately, that didn't happen because, the cautions came out and everything like that. But, we were precise on pit road, and that's what we were focusing on all race long because we knew we had the speed to, catch anybody that we needed to.
Well, Tom, congratulations on starting out the season here with a 3rd place run. Obviously, something to really build off of as you head to Homestead next week. We're going to give you the opportunity now for some thank you sponsors and shout outs.
Yeah, I just want to thank you guys for putting on an amazing broadcast like usual. FRN on the car this week. Unfortunately, we couldn't get the win. Top 3 is okay, though. The whole team, Luminary, they put together constant good setups and stuff like that every single week, and I can't thank them enough. G Fuel, Fire News, Genesis Rescue Systems, and all the other sponsors. And my best friend Sam, she's now supporting me and constantly, and my friend Sydney, she's always there. So yeah, and a big shout out to Derek Schilling. He stole this one, but well deserved.
That's Tom Bourne, 3rd place here tonight in the season opener at Daytona. Once again, congratulations there, Tom, and we look forward to seeing if maybe we'll find you in victory in the next week as you guys remain here in Florida, heading down to Homestead, Miami.
I hope so, but hopefully we'll be talking to you guys soon.
And let's now get his teammate, Robert Kenny, who brings it home second place here tonight. Hey, Robert, it's Anthony and Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got us?
Yeah, I gotcha.
Wow. I mean, chaotic turn 4. 6 of you battling when you take the white. And then it's kind of a who's going to get back to the start-finish line first off of turn 4, heading down through that first half of the trial with the start-finish line. I mean, obviously, we saw the contact from our point of view. What'd you see from inside your car?
Just a little clarification. Is this the green-white checkered you're talking about, or before the green-white checkered?
Green-white checkered.
Green-white checkered? I saw absolutely none of it because I was 10 seconds down the road behind all of them. And I'm like, I come through turn 4, see cars everywhere. I'm like, all right, avoid what I can, get as good a finish as I can. Cross the line. It turns over from like 9th to P2. I'm like, huh, I'm second? Nobody finished in front of me other than the 69? Alright, I guess that I'll take that for a destroyed car.
Yeah, you and your team had a lot of hardships this race, and it's astonishing that, we've talked about it earlier in the broadcast, but circumstance will find some favor in you sometimes, and it does find some favor in at least 2 of your drivers here tonight. Go throughout the whole race, like, you guys were running pretty well throughout the entire race. You seem to have the pit stops down. We saw short pitting happening earlier on in the first 2 stages. What did it take for you as a team to cooperate or to collaborate and really be on the same page? I'm sure it's easy for you as a team. And could you have challenged for the lead if all of your teammates were still running at 100%?
Oh, most definitely. If all of our team were 100%, I have no doubt in my mind we would have had at least 2 of the top 3, possibly swept the top 5 if we all just worked together. But it showed in the stages. When we pit, us as a team would pull the pack no matter what. It was the stage breaks that brought everybody back together. So if there were no stage breaks, we would have been gone. It kind of would have been. It wouldn't have been fair. We would have just had such a great lead. But that's kind of the good and the bad of stage racing. You get everybody back together, so you actually get racing. But when you have such a good setup and such good drivers, where you can just pull away on super speedways, you kind of hate the stage breaks, but it's whatever.
I mean, Robert, obviously, great start to your year here, a second place finish. So what does this give you as far as the confidence level now, being able to leave Daytona, surviving up there inside of the podium, and heading into Homestead next week?
Honestly, it really doesn't do much. At least in my mind, super speedways are always a roll of the dice. You either get good finishes or you get wrecked, or you never know what's going to happen because it's not always in your hands. Next week at Homestead, I believe it is. That's when we'll really get sights on who's got good cars and who's more mid pack.
Well, Robert, congratulations on a great performance here today. We saw you put a wrecked race car into victory lane last year at Bristol, and you bring it home P2 here tonight. Congratulations. We're going to give you the opportunity now for some thank you sponsors and shout-outs.
Yeah, just want to thank Mike Tellier and Bronson Stafford for giving us good setups this week. This week it was Mike with the great setup. Sponsored on the cars, Sim Speed Shop, Astro Gaming, G Fuel, Cineplex. And then we actually had a couple FRN cars out there, so I'm pretty sure they got some good TV time. And then you guys for putting on the broadcast and admins for putting the races on every week.
That's Robert Kenny. He's going to bring it home P2 here tonight, Daytona International Speedway. Once again, congratulations on a great run, and we look forward to see you carry this over into Homestead next week.
Yep, thanks. Have a good night.
And I'm sure that he's still celebrating. Let's go down to victory lane and see if we can get a word with tonight's winner, Derek Schilling. Hey, Derek, it's Anthony and Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got us?
Hey, how you doing?
Man, your car looked like a modified out there, but you're 6th place on the back straightaway. You're the winner when you cross the start-finish line. When we took the onboard with you, all we saw was smoke. Did you see a clear lane, or was it just hope you picked the right spot and just keep that pedal to the floor?
Keep it to the floor and hope I went the right direction. Normally don't have good luck at this track, so I was kind of figuring I took the wrong one.
Well, Lady Luck was certainly on your side tonight. We were talking about all race long that it seemed like when drivers would get damaged, they would keep going, and you never want to say quit. And certainly you didn't, and it finds out that you get a win. How hard was it to manage a car so damaged that it looked like a completely different discipline that we used to see race at Daytona, and manage that throughout the remaining laps and eventually end up with a win?
Well, on that last green white checkered, came down and I was able to get it fixed, and it gave me plenty of time to get somewhat of a front end. And the 3 car just pushed me all the way from that green flag all the way up to that accident. And I mean, honestly, if it wasn't for them wrecking and him pushing me like he did, I would have never been close.
You know, Derek, obviously tonight, not only winning the season opener at Daytona, but you clinch yourself a playoff spot as well. How much of a weight off your shoulders is that heading down the rest of this regular season?
Oh, it's a huge weight lifted off your shoulders. I mean, anytime you can go in and just be able to run it and not have that stress, that you're easily able to outperform what you could.
Well, Derek, congratulations. We say a lot of times at the Super Speedways, right place, right time. That was proved here tonight as you pick up this victory. Anybody tonight you'd like to thank and shout out as far as sponsors or anybody else?
I definitely like to thank you guys for the broadcast, and then obviously NSM and Gary for helping out getting this setup put together, and NSM Wraps, NSM Photos, Venom PC, Track Racer, Butt Kicker, Shady Rays, Raz Energy, Struggle Beyond the Decade, Pinnacle Jiu-Jitsu. Then last, I'd like to wish my son a happy birthday. His birthday's today, so it made it even better to win today.
Well, Derek Schilling, the celebration continues here tonight at Daytona as he wins the season opener for Season 2 of the Clutch Drop Cup Series. Congratulations there, Derek. Well deserved. Well done. We look forward to seeing how this momentum carries you for the rest of this regular season en route to the playoffs.
Hopefully it takes me a lot farther than what it did last season. I didn't get a win last season, missed out on the playoffs. Now I'm in, so hopefully it can go real far.
All right, well, best of luck to you, Derek. Well done. Good win.
Thank you, guys.
Well, a tale of 2 Daytonas, Anthony. We ended up having, I think it was only 1 caution for contact incident in the first 2 stages. Then we got to the 3rd stage, and everybody knew that at the end of that stage, the checkered flag was on the line. That's when the aggressiveness picked up, and that's what we expect to see when it comes to Daytona.
It never seems to disappoint. We're not in Las Vegas, but the roulette wheel known as Daytona International Speedway definitely played favorites tonight. And for one driver specifically, it was a tale of getting through and capitalizing on others' misfortune. For others, it is finding misfortune. And a lot of drivers that had good cars running up to the top of the field earlier on in the race, as the sun set here at Daytona and day became twilight, it shifted the momentum, and a lot of drivers that were involved in some earlier incidences find themselves capitalizing on what happened at the last lap. So a lot can happen in the span of even a couple of laps at Daytona, let alone 2 whole entire halves of the race. And again, Daytona, one of those racetracks you cannot look away from at any moment. You'll find something spectacular happening.
Came down to the final maybe 300 feet at most to determine tonight's winner. And we had touched on the fact that, there were drivers that were out there with wrecked race cars completely off the pace, and we were documenting they're out there trying to pick up positions, trying to pick up points. One thing we failed to mention is, some drivers out there that were wrecked race cars were trying to stay out there in case something that happened there out of turn 4 ended up happening and benefiting them. Derek Schilling fitting that bill.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of drivers that stayed out looking for good finishes, even though that they had damaged cars. Robert Kenny, one of those other drivers that had a damaged race car. Tom Bornard, tire top 3 were cars that had damage from previous crashes and then found themselves in the top 3. And then you look at 4th place, Brian Seabury had to go to pit road at the very beginning of the race, had the wrong setup plugged into his car. His car could have very well overheated and ended up having an engine blow on him, but he came down, got the setup fixed, then came back out, fell a lap down throughout the entire race, got his lap back, got back to the front of the field, and then found himself in a 4th place position. And to boot, Justin Belmonte, also with damage, finds himself in the 5th place position. In fact, you can look at the top 10, and I don't think any of those cars had any bit of health left in them. They were wrecked cars. They were cars that had been wrecked for a long time. We talked about the 89 of Brandon King. He finishes 12th tonight.
Yeah. Even the engine expiring there on the 73, we saw under pacing of Jeremy Bushi still brings it home in the 13th position. So a lot of drivers able to salvage what they could and at least surviving Daytona in more ways than one. But we shift gears now. Daytona certainly playing its part here into the start of the season. But next week we head to Homestead Miami Speedway, the 1.5-mile track. And this one I think was all about survival. Next week I think it's going to be all about strategy.
Absolutely. Homestead, one of those unique circuits where there's a lot of banking and a long straight. It's kind of almost kin to an old school Atlanta in a way, where you have high banks and then the straightaways that kind of resemble the old layout of Atlanta Motor Speedway. A little bit less banking on the straightaways, but going to be fast racing there, and it's always a show there. And then after that, we have a whole host of racetracks after that, but we got to get through to Homestead first, and that's really going to set the bar for who's going to be favorites throughout the season, especially on the 1.5 miles.
Well, Daytona has certainly played its part, with Derek Schilling winning. He is the first driver to lock himself up a spot in this season's playoffs. And, oh, by the way, this game-changing track is the regular season finale as well. So it's definitely still going to have something to say when we get down to the very end of the regular season. Somebody else might be able to snipe themselves a spot in the playoffs at the very last moment. But a crazy one here tonight, an unbelievable finish. The top 6 cars wrecked, the 7th place car snakes through, and Derek Schilling is the one celebrating in victory lane. Anthony, a crazy one, a wild one here tonight at Daytona. Certainly did not disappoint. Appreciate you joining me tonight for this one.
It's always a fun opportunity to come and call one of these races, and I have enjoyed this race fully, and I can't wait to see when they go back to racing next week.
Season 2 of the Clutch Drop Cup Series is officially underway. Next week, we bring you coverage from Homestead Miami Speedway, green flag to fly at 9:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday evening, folks. For Anthony McCurry, I'm Seth Cole. You've been watching another broadcast courtesy of the Flatout Racing Network.
This broadcast is the copyrighted work of Flatout Racing Network and may not be rebroadcast, retranslated, or used in any form without the express written consent of Flatout Racing Network and iRacing.com Motorsports Simulations. Flatout Racing Network would like to thank you for your support